January. And we have our agenda here, a couple adjustments to the agenda. We are going to move agenda item 1, substitute teacher policy, down to 3, and move the cell phone policy to number 1, so that Mr. Hansert and we have a presenter here who has a PowerPoint presentation, so he is not going to be tied up.
Thank you.
Also, we are going to strike agenda item, or actually defer agenda item 4 on the athletic director and athletic program to next month. And so those are the agenda item changes. So this is then the call to order. And so we're going to talk about cell phone policy, teacher appreciation, substitute teacher policy, art programs, and then transportation of students. So that's the work topics for tonight. So Mr. Hansert, you can lead off
Well, thank
on
you.
the cell phone policy.
I have asked Mr. Chris Cope down here today. This is not a trying to get anybody to sway this away or anything. This is something that was even brought up yesterday in our meeting, that our media in the school systems and so on and so forth. So this is not to try to sway anybody. Chris is not down here to sway anybody. I'm not here to sway anybody. Just it's a hot topic because of the social media. And I know Chris, I've known Chris for a while. He's a chairman of the Warren County School Board up there. He's been asked to come to the state. He is they are the forerunners, 4 guys in the forefront of the cell phone that's going on in the state of Tennessee. So without further ado, Mr. Chris Cope, Warren County.
If I can just say one thing too, is the state has legislation that is passing through the legislature.
Exactly.
On cell phone policy, and the feds do also, so we're kind of trying to get out in front of that
That's exactly
particular
right.
policy and
That's exactly
talking
what
about it here, so.
that's a
people
very
are
good
aware.
point.
So, thank you, Mr. Hansard.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Scott, for inviting me up here. And again, we're not trying to sway anybody. I just want to talk to you about our journey that we went on in Warren County actually about the last year, and how we got started and where this came about and what it's looked like so far in our first half of this school year in Warren County, and what we've noticed and stuff. So how it all got started, and I'll tell you, it was not this past Christmas break, but the Christmas break before. I had a couple of teachers reach out to me just out of the blue, said, hey, we are being overrun by these cell phones. We cannot compete with this. If we're sitting right here in this meeting, if everybody would have their phone out on their desk and turn their volume on, I bet you before I get through, we'd have 50 notifications going off between us all in here. And it doesn't matter if we've got them on vibrate or not on silence. If that phone goes off, you're automatically going to say, what does that text mean? Who's trying to call me? Do I need to get to that? Do I need to respond? So we're breaking our concentrations. Can you imagine one teacher with 20 or 25 students in the classroom and these cell phones going off constantly, and they're trying to teach, and you turn around and your students are not paying attention because they're worried about what's going on after class or what's going on tonight. My mom's texting me, I got to do this, got to pick up my little brother. So I talked to a few teachers, and I said, all right, let's do an experiment. We're going to do an in-house experiment, and I got 2 or 3 teachers from the high school, a middle school teacher, I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, when you get into class, I want you to have your kids, because like you guys probably, most everybody, we did have an electronic device policy that says, hey, during non-instruction times, you can have it out. During lunch, during halls, you can have it out. But we know how kids are, and they're going to push this, and they had them out and had them between their legs, and they're looking down in there. We know the kids. We know how it is. So I said, have your kids pull out their phones, put it on their desk, turn on the volume. And every time that a notification goes off, that kid needs to go to the board and write a mark on what app went off. So here's what we noticed. Can I get this to work? Well, no. There we go. All right. So this is a Warren County High School biology class, 15 minutes into class. we had 149 distractions. So you can look over here, how many Snapchat notifications, how many text messages, Facebook. So out of the 149, we noticed that 53% was social media. 5 minutes into a class here, we had 151 distractions. These are just students in your class, so you're trying to teach for 5 minutes and you've got 151 distractions. And you can see what they are: Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, text messages, emails. A biology class. This is a little longer period of time, but still 140 distractions in one class period. And our teachers are having to compete with this. All right, here's a history class. 15 minutes, 85 of them, 65% social media. Same thing. We've got TikToks. Look at the Snapchat. Look at the text messages. Look at Instagram. It wasn't long before we realized our teachers are being overrun here. I mean, you got one teacher in a class and they're having to compete with this and still trying to teach our kids. So I stumbled upon, and I brought the book. I encourage everybody that's get a chance to pick up a copy of this book, called The Anxious Generation, by a social psychologist named Jonathan Haidt. I stumbled upon him on Joe Rogan's podcast and listened to it. If you get a chance, you don't have to listen to that podcast, but listen to an interview with this guy. He's a social psychologist that's done the research for the past 8 or 10 years on the influence of screen time, social media, and what it does to our children, much less what it does to us as adults. So here's what we see from the U.S. Department. This is from some data that we've gathered. U.S. Emergency Room for self-harm from ages 10 to 14. And what I want to show you right here, a lot of this we kind of want to blame on COVID, right? We want to say that's where our depression, that's where all these things started happening for our young kids. And then we look at teens with depression, what they're battling. So we want to think that depression started in 2020 when we shut all of our kids out of school and everything. But you look right here. This starts 2012 and 2014 is when we start seeing the huge rise in depression rates. Girls, 145% increase, and in boys at 161%. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so this really was hit home to me. So what we realized is what happened between the years 2012 and 2016 where these big spikes were. We can't blame that on COVID. Now, COVID didn't help anything because we can see a big spike in COVID. But from the years 2012 to 2014, 3 things happened. The invention of the iPhone, the invention of the front-facing camera, which selfies started becoming a thing back in 2014, and in 2014 is when Facebook acquired Instagram. So us older generation, we love our Facebook, but our kids are not on that. I promise you, Facebook is not a problem in our kids today. But when they acquired Instagram and the selfie and the pictures started coming out, that's when we started seeing a major rise in the United States with depression. These right here, you can go to other countries. Only in Western developed nations do you see these rises like this. All the other countries around the world don't have these spikes like this. U.S. anxiety is prevalent. So you start seeing age groups. And each generation had its own anxiety. So you had the boomer generation, as they say now. They were World War II. They were Nazis. That was their biggest anxiety parts. You go up to Generation X, kind of my generation. We went through the Cold War, so that was our biggest fear as a kid. I can still remember some of the, fallout shelters, and you get under your desk in the case of a nuclear attack. But when you get it to this Gen Z, when we start talking about our kids right now that are 18 years old, what is their biggest thing? Why has anxiety amongst kids risen that much in just 3 generations? It's because we give them the access to the world with no stipulations. We say, here you go. If you want to watch something, there it is. If you want to have access to anything, during school hours, whatever time, there it is, anything. We're not going to filter it at all. So Generation Alpha, that's the years that we're talking about now. It's born around 2010 and later. So this is 14, 15-year-olds. We're starting middle school, early high school. 1 in 5 has a mental, emotional, or behavior disorder, with ADHD and anxiety being the most prevalent, according to the CDC. So if you've talked to any teachers and you've talked to any parent, and you see that we know that the behavioral problems, the mental issues that we're facing, that our kids are facing right now is an epidemic. I mean, you talk to the teachers I've talked to, and a lot of the research says that the reason we can't retain teachers is not because of all these testing and this stuff. It is because of just discipline issues. They're not going to deal with this. We have put our kids, Generation Z, which is somewhere between the ages of 14 and 26, which is our high school seniors and stuff, is dealing with identity, body image, friendship issues, according to their therapist in the article. Young Gen Zers who are in high school worry about social hierarchies and dynamics, like who's cool, kind of like the cliques we had when we were in school. But when we put this into their hands, they get to see it all day long during school, in school. All right, according to available data, charts depicting Generation Alpha anxiety often shows a concerning trend indicating a higher prevalence of anxiety compared to previous generations, ADHD and anxiety being the most common mental health concerns. If you were at TSBA, one of the things they talked about is what are we doing about mental health? What are we doing with mental health with these kids? We are struggling to try to keep up, and we're putting millions and millions of dollars in our school systems about how we're going to keep up with mental health of these kids. I mean, we all know. We can't sit here and deny that these kids that we are elected, to oversee and to do the best we can for them. This mental problem is an issue. Talk to any teacher, and they'll tell you that. And it's not just teenagers in high schools. We're talking about, we've had to open up our alternative school to third graders. I mean, we're doing starting in third grade right now at Warren County with our alternative school. And we actually have kids that are younger than that fit that protocol that should be in there. All right, this is John Templeton. He is a youth pastor at one of our big churches. And this was one of the things, he was doing a lot of work with our youth in Warren County. And this is something it really stuck to me that he said a few months ago. But the hardest thing in our society is being a teenage girl. And this is where it gets me, because I got a 13-year-old daughter in 8th grade. There's so many voices, so many influences constantly telling them that they don't measure up, or they have to be this or that. What's the solution to that? And I'll show you the picture he talks about. But the number one thing is community. You need it. We were meant to walk in this life on your own. And I was telling them, we are social creatures. We were created by God to be social people. And even though we open up the world with our phones, it has created more isolation than anything else we've ever invented in this world. So this is the picture that he had posted, and this is a quote I picked up from Jonathan Haidt, the author of this book. He says, "People don't get depressed when they face threats collectively." So if something happened in this room right now, we're all in here together. We're not going to be so concerned since we've got each other. But if I'm in this room by myself and there's nobody else in this building and something happens, then I'm going to start having a little bit more issues with it. So people don't get depressed when they face threats collectively. They get depressed when they feel isolated, lonely, and useless. So that's what social media has done to our children. We had thought it's going to open up the world to them, but what it's done is made them feel more isolated and lonely and useless than anything. As we see in the data that shows the anxiety and all these things. So I've reached out to a place called Phone Free School Movement, and they have all sorts of, and I think I may have sent this to Scott, this toolkit that they provide, but there's a lot of information on here, and a few of the things that I had to point out here. It says 83% of the teachers support an all-day phone-free school policy. Teenagers spend nearly 5 hours a day on social media apps. 5 hours a day. Now, 24 hours, if you take a few hours of those away for sleeping, you take 7 hours of those for school, 50% of kids get 237 notifications per day on their phones. Some receive as many as 4,500 every day. We're talking about kids here. Data shows students not using their phones during class wrote down 62% more information during class time where these phone policies have been in place. 62% more. They also scored a full letter grade and a half higher on multiple choice tests. So students that don't have their phone in their classrooms. These are not just made up. This is hard data here that's been, and it's got all the links and all the citations to it. 95% teachers say anxiety and depression is the number one problem in public schools, K through 12. Does anybody disagree with that? It's hard when you listen to our teachers, they will tell you. 1 in 3 teens, 1/3 of all teens reported they have been exposed to pornography during school day. This is something that we've really picked up on in Warren County, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But when we start taking this on, it wasn't just a school board thing. We didn't just say, hey, as a school board, we're going to do this. We got our community involved. We reached out. Our general sessions judge was one of the main key players in this. We went to our sheriff's department and said, hey, what do you think? How's this? Our SRO officers, what's going on here? So you see the data over and over again. Before I go to this next slide, because I just added it today, and I talked to Scott yesterday. So when you start talking about taking the phones out of the schools and that our students won't have that with them, the number one thing, and we'll talk about pushbacks in a minute, but the number one thing is what happened in Antioch the other day. And I tell everybody, look, I've got a daughter in school, and if that happened, I would be worried to death that I wouldn't be able to get a hold of her. I mean, that's reality, and I understand that concern. I truly understand that concern. But here's the thing. I looked at some research today, and this is not a topic nobody likes to talk about, but school shooters share more commonalities, so they can look at these, including a history of emotional distress, mental health issues, and exposure to violence. They often plan their violence and may show signs of crisis before the attack. Every one of these things we've shown is what our kids are facing today. So we can throw money after all these symptoms, but until we get to this core problem and this core issue of our mental health problems in our schools and in our society, none of this is going to change. We can add metal detectors, we can add all of those things, but that's not going to change what's going on. Exposure to violence. I want to talk about that for just a second, because I teach middle school and high school Sunday school, and I was talking to our kids Sunday morning. When I was a kid, and I can remember, and I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but you could go to the video store, and there was I think it may have been on HBO, it was called Faces of Death. And it showed horrific car accidents and people, and it was unheard of. I mean, it was just, today, any kid can get on TikTok, can get on Instagram and watch 100 videos in a row of people getting killed, people being assassinated, and they've become numb to it. When we watched those things as children, I mean, it was horrific. These kids watch it today, and it doesn't even faze them. So they're constantly exposed to just violence all the time, and it's just numbed them. They have nothing. So students on average, according to who you talk to, 192 alerts per day from their cell phones, 11 notifications per hour. I think these are really low because I've got a 13-year-old, and I know how often her phone goes off. Cell phones and their applications are designed to catch the attention of students, which is disruptive to both learning and relationships. Why do each social media app have different ringtones? Each app you have has a different notification sound, because that way you know exactly which one it is. If they all sounded the same, then we would not be apt to go back through those things. So I've talked about our middle school. What we've done was with our general sessions judge, some of our school board members, our sheriff's department, Mr. Dishman here, I don't know if you know Wendell Dishman. He is, or Barry Dishman, sorry. He was our juvenile court advocate, served 30 years. He just recently retired. But we would get every student in our county, every school had 6th through 8th kids. So this is our Warren County Middle School. We would have sessions with them, and we would talk about subjects. We would talk about vaping. We would talk about the importance of attendance. We would talk about all kinds of social media issues. This is myself talking at Morrison Elementary. This is Jarvis Johnson, who is the captain of our SRO programs, and he's actually our newest, one of our newest school board members. Dearborn Elementary, each elementary school we went to. Talking about phone-free school movement, this is a nonprofit organization that I reached out to, and they started helping us with some of the information and stuff. But one of the things Judge Moore, our general sessions judge, started talking about, because we went back to that slide, talks about our kids being exposed to sexual stuff, to nude, to pornography at a young age. They could be sitting in your math class and with their phone in hand go to any pornography site they want to and be watching it, and no teachers are going to know. And we allow that in our classrooms. Now, we're going to say we don't allow that, but hey, we're all teenage kids at some point in time. But sextortion is a thing that our judge has really hit on. He just left a conference and talked about things we don't really, that's kind of uncomfortable to talk about, but the percentage of our kids that are in middle school that have been exposed to either some sort of sextortion ring, some sort of pornography, if you look at the numbers of what kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old that have sent nudes to another student in middle school, I mean, we don't like to talk about that, but it's happening. And I promise you it's happening in Coffee County the same it is happening in Warren County. Not long after we started this, we had an incident that happened at our middle school. 7th grader went to the bathroom. Another kid followed them in there with their phone and videotaped them and sent it on the internet. And it was out exposed to everywhere. And that's when we said, we've got to do something here. We cannot allow this to happen to our children anymore. And I know a lot of the policies say, hey, let them have it when they're in lunchtime. Let them have it when they go. One thing, look here, I'm going off right now. One thing that the kids really love to do is they text each other, hey, meet me out in the hallway at such and such time, and we'll go do whatever. All right, so we done a poll we put it out before we started this. Here's the thing, we started looking at this in March, and then by June, we had our policy in place and passed. So we put out a poll just to ask 10 questions. We had a poll for our parents. We had a poll for our teachers. All right, so teachers, here's your 10 questions. Parents, here's your 10 questions. A lot of them were similar. This is a parent survey. As a parent, do you feel like your students should be allowed to have cell phones while at school? We have over 70% of the 150 that answered yes. All right. I, as a parent, at one time would probably be right there too. What does your child mostly use their cell phone for? What I found alarming was almost 30% of parents think that their kids are using their phones for emergencies. I said, if we have that many emergencies in Warren County, we've got a bigger issue to worry about. We looked at those, our non-scientific polls that we done. They say only less than 10, or right at 10% say social media. We noticed that every one of them was 50 to 60, 70% of those notifications were social media, right? Texting, emergencies, music, all the stuff. How does having a cell phone affect your child's learning? So as a parent, they're saying that only about 25%, the negative and very negative, less than 25% believe that it affects them negatively. Most of them say, it doesn't affect them at all, right? Let's see here. Cell phones can have a negative impact on learning primarily due to the distraction nature. We as adults are the same way. We get a notification, you're going to look at it. You're not going to pay attention to what's going on. Kids do not have, their brains are not fully developed. Nobody in high school. Not till they're usually in their early 20s before our frontal cortex is fully developed and our decision making really is intact. So you can see that it decreases focus and attention in classrooms, potentially resulting in lower academic performance, and they can also facilitate cheating. I don't know, there's a app called something about math something. You can take a picture of the problem and there's the answer. Right there on your phone. They don't have to, and it'll just spit it right out for you. So how does having a cell phone, this is the parent survey. How does a cell phone impact your kids' mental health? You have 60%, so only about 20-something% think that it negatively affects their mental health. All the data that we've collected so far shows that it highly affects their mental health. Mental health are through the roof. And us as parents are going to sit back and think that it doesn't have any effect on our kids at all. So going back to this, parents think that it has no effect on their anxiety or on their mental health. We show that CDC, all the results saying that our children's mental health are through the roof. Our emergency room visits for self-harm, suicide rates are through the roof, especially in teenage girls. So this is our teachers, okay? This is our teacher survey. So if you allowed your students to use their cell phone in class, what is the primary purpose? Again, we're at 60% almost of emergencies that our teachers are saying. And again, I say, hey, if we have that many emergencies in our classroom, something's wrong. Social-related research. Our teachers said that 0% said that they let their kids use it for social media. How does having a cell phone affect your students' learning? This is our teachers. These are the people that are in our classrooms that are around our kids every single day. Look at what our teachers say. Negative, very negative, and I don't know. Only less than 10% say that having your student having a cell phone in classroom impacts their learning, positive or very positive. So here again, this is what our teachers who are in our classrooms, in the trenches every day, are telling us about what cell phones do into their classroom. And this is what us as parents are out here thinking that's going on in our classroom. And then we blame the teachers because our kids can't learn anything, but yet we're sitting here, this is so divided. And, it's a communication thing. And as a parent, I understand both sides of this, but this is where we have to draw this connection. This is where we have to bring our parents in and show them this. Because I promise you, the number one people that were opposed to this cell phone policy are the parents. You would think that it would be the high school kids, the juniors and seniors. Now, I promise you, I got some bad looks for some of those kids that I know. They didn't like it at all. We have a student advisory panel, and I don't know if you guys do this, but we have a student advisory panel that come in and sit on our board, and they give us an update of what's going on at the high school, and then one of the members will sit in on our meeting, non-voting, but they can come in and talk to us. So this particular student, we were talking to early discussions on it, and she was against it. She was a senior, or junior, going to be a senior. And as she talked, she said, I'm seeing this, but I realized after looking at my screen time, I'm not living in the moment, I'm living through my phone. I'm living through other people, not even really living at all. So this is what our kids are doing. They're not having these connections with other students. They're worried about posting a picture on Instagram that I took in the bathroom during first period. Now I'm looking every period to see how many likes I got. And I'm not worried about you trying to teach me English, or I'm not worried about you trying to teach me economics, because I'm trying to figure out who didn't like it or who said this because, or who made fun of what I'm wearing. So I'm sure you guys do the same. We start doing our policies, and we throw a lot of this stuff in our consent agenda. Is policy, blah, 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 through whatever. We're going to throw it in consent agenda. We're going to pass the consent agenda, and that's it. And there it is. We're good for another year on all these policies. So when it came time for our student policy, I went through and I looked through all this, and I was like, you know what? I'm pulling this one out of consent. So on I think it was our March meeting, I said, I'm pulling this number out, and we're going to talk about this separate. Couple of things. We got a 6th board member. I had about 2 other members with me that was saying, all right, I kind of like this. I had 3 members that's like, Our director of schools, bless his heart, he will tell you this to this day. He said, I was against this. He said, I told you when you first mentioned this, there's no way you can pull this off. He has 2 kids that are in high school, and he has another one coming up. One of our board members has a daughter in high school. And as we discussed this, they would say, when we'd sit down at the dinner table at night, it was pretty cold conversations going on from my daughter saying that you're going to take our phones away at school. And of course, mine's in 8th grade. She's in middle school. She's going into high school next year. She didn't like this at all either. But as we started looking through the data, we started reading, we started researching this, we're like, you know what? There's something to this. We need to give this a try. So the things that we realized as I looked at some different districts throughout the United States, there wasn't much in Tennessee. We went through probably 15 different policies through the state. Some of them had good stuff, some of them not so much. But the one thing we realized we had to do, if we were going to do a cell phone policy like we have, is it has to be a bell-to-bell policy. There can't be no exceptions. There can't be, you can't say, oh, well, you can have them during lunch, or you can have them during non-instructional time. Our principal at our high school, Chris Hobbs, come up to me when we first started discussing this, and he used to be he was the principal at Franklin County for a little bit before he came back to Warren County. And he said, please do me a favor as a board member. Please, when you pass that policy, put in there that there is no discretion, that no teacher has a discretion, no administrator has a discretion, because our policy before said that. Hey, it's up to teachers' discretion how they wanted to implement their phone policy. So if you had 10 minutes left in class, all right, kids, you can feel free to have your phones out. He said, please take that away from me. He said, that way when a parent comes to me and says, hey, you have the discretion to make this right, he says, no, I don't. That's between you and the board, because my teachers, he said, it makes it easy to discipline my teachers, because my teachers don't have the discretion to say it's okay for you to use it in this particular case. So for this, and what we ended up doing is strengthening our offense policies. So we did give them a warning because we know, hey, the first offense, these kids are going to try you right off the get. You know, your first offense, because our old policy, I think we had 6 or 7. I mean, it went on out forever. So you see the second one, you're going to collect it. The parents is notified. The parents has to come and pick it up. On your second offense, it's either 2 days after school detention or 1 week of lunch detention. The device is collected. Parents, you know, so, and then the third offense is you have to have 2 days of ISS. They're not allowed to bring the device back the rest of the year. It's collected. You know, parents have to pick it up. It goes on their behavior contract. We record all these things. Fourth offense, K through 5 could result in suspension, short-term suspension, device collected, and it could lead to alternative school for our high schoolers. We had this policy, and when we were at the legislative conference in July in Gatlinburg, we were starting to get this rolled out, and we had a principals meeting, and our principals come to us and said, "Hey, can you strengthen those policies a little bit more? Can you strengthen the punishment just a little bit more? Because we wanted this thing to be, we want it to stick. We want it to everybody to know." So we went back and revised this policy and made it a little bit more stricter than what we actually had to start with. So by that time we started, I think this was a News Channel 2, you know, we've been on the news a little bit about this. We did decide to go with the Yonder pouch. I won't play this video, but, and we had some issues with this, because as soon as we passed this bill, or passed this policy, and we decided to go to the Yonder pouch, is when Arkansas done statewide ban on their cell phones, so they put in a huge order. So we ordered ours in July and didn't get them till end of September. So our school had already started 5 or 6 weeks. So what we had decided to do is put this on a school by school basis. Most of them didn't roll it out till after they got back from Christmas break, because it was working fairly well. We had bought some lock boxes for our elementary schools. They could come in. You know, my daughter goes to a K through 8 school. She comes in, she puts her phone in the office, they lock it up. At the end of the day, they come back and get it out. We had done similar things in our high school. There's different ways you could do that. You can have lockers in a first period class and then give them 10 minutes at the end of the day to come back. If you've not, and I didn't bring one with me, but if you're not familiar with these are magnetic lockable pouches. The kids keep their pouches. That's their pouch. They're responsible for them. And they come in the morning, they put their phone in there. They're big enough, not only for our phones, but we also put smartwatches and earbuds in there, the earpods. So there's no electronic device that they can have. All that goes into their pouch. They close it. They can throw it in their backpack, whatever they want to do. They can't access it, because the only way you can access those is through a magnet. And those magnets are strategically placed on exits at the office has one, and then each exit door. So at the end of the day, the kids come by, hit that magnet, it opens their thing, they can pull their stuff out and go on about their day. They take the pouch home with them. They're responsible for them. I think the cost on them was about $25 a piece. We fortunate enough, we still had a little bit of extra money that we got to use for that, because that was a little kickback from some of our communities. We've spent $100,000 on these bags, but we did use extra money, so it was a little bit easier to explain. But we are rolling those out right now, and they seem to be working pretty well. We know kids are going to lose them. Kids are going to say, "Well, I didn't bring it," or this or that. Kids are always going to try to work around the rules, but we thought this was a good idea and a good way, and so far it's worked fairly well in the places we've rolled out. Our communications group got to work on, because we didn't give them a lot of time as a board. That one thing they wanted to wait is because we didn't pass this till June. Well, they said, well, all of our schools are already going to have their stuff out for the year, and we're going to have to add this to the policy. I don't care. Add some pages to the policy. I don't care if you've got your book out for the rest of the year. So our communications come up with this: less distraction, more connection. Because when you get a notification on your phone, it is not just a notification, it is a distraction. If I got a text message or an email or a phone call right now, I'm going to be looking and say, well, I wonder what she wanted. I wonder if that's something I need to get to. So the distractions, less distraction, more connection. So we ramped up our social media. This was in July going into August. So we're letting everybody know, here's what's going on. We got the word out to all our shareholders and said, like, hey, this is the plan. I know it may not be popular, but this is the way we're doing it. So, first day of school in our high school. This cell phone policy, this was from one of our cafeteria workers. Cell phone policy might be the best thing we've ever done. Freshman lunch with no phones was absolutely awesome. This is from our principal. Our students and teachers have been more interactive with one another. Students surprisingly have been happy after the initial shock. They've adjusted well. Our teachers are happy. The atmosphere is back to an educational environment. I promise you, you talk to any teacher that teaches at Warren County High School, they will say this is the best thing that's ever happened. Our students now has got the shock over with. They love it too. They do. Our high school students, you go see them at the ball games, and you go see, they're not even on their phones during the ball games now. They're running back and forth like we used to do with kids, and they're back and forth and back and forth. It's amazing. It's a game changer. That was one of the words that was used by several teachers to me afterwards, about the first month in. It's a game changer. Just the social interactions between our students. After about a month, I went to the high school and just went into the hall during one of the breaks. And just so much liveliness, activities. And you talk to some of the monitors that are there, and they like, before, it was you could almost whisper through here because the kids they would run over each other looking down at their phones. And now it's just laughter, it's talking, they're having a good time again. So, does this work? So I got some numbers actually this morning from Principal Hobbs. So our referrals, for our discipline referrals, August, let's see, the green is last year, the blue is this year. Of course, August started off with a little bump because everybody's going to try to push the rules, right? But you see, in September, our referrals started going down. In October, our referrals for discipline referrals are way down. In November, they started to get up a little bit. I just looked at the December numbers, and they're staying on point right here. We're way down in referrals for our students. This is at our high school. And this is going to break it down a little more. So green.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Are those referrals for cell phone related issues?
Those are for all related issues, and this breaks it down a little more. So I'll point this out. So the green was last year, blue is this year. Defiance, we're way down. Everything across the board, even our tardiness, our skipping class, fights, tobacco, drug use, because vaping was a big issue, and I know it happens here too. They would hide them in the restrooms and then text their buddy, hey, I left it in stall 2 and it's behind the commode, so when you get done, you can go over there and do that too. So all across the board, pretty much everything, this tech did go up, because I got the ones from today that was up to date from Principal Hobbs this morning, and I asked him about that, and he said the behavior is it's getting just a little bit because they're they can't meet with their friends, so some of this tech stuff, they're going through their email and trying to do some stuff, so they're getting some, but we can monitor all that. So that's kind of getting to that, and some disruptions have been up just a little bit just because they've got this extra time on their hands, and they don't know how to handle that. And one of the things that they talked about in that phone-free school movement is have something there for the kids. Have cards or have a game or something for them. If you've got 10 minutes class, let them have whatever it is, and let them just use their minds, So we have right now already, and we talked to our SROs, and they're saying, it was 5 or 6 times a day, it was cell phone related issues that we were dealing with. Almost everything that we were dealing with had something to do with cell phones, whether it was vaping, whether it was fights, whether it was bullying. And you can look at our bullying, zero referrals for the first 3 months in school. We didn't have any bullying issues. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I'm just saying we have a drastic reduction in this. So here's some benefits of this phone-free policy. This is fewer distractions. Of course, that's a given. You take that distraction away from our kids, that's fewer distractions, less cyberbullying, fewer fights, and social media-related drama. Because I promise you, a 13-year-old daughter that's a cheerleader, I know all about this drama stuff with these females for sure. Increased engagement. Students engage more with their peers, teachers, outside of classroom. I'll tell you one thing that they reported on our first month is when we had our class, our club drive at high school where they would set up for extracurricular activities and all the clubs afterwards, they had a record number of turnouts for our clubs. Our HOSA club was a record number. We had several clubs that had a record number of students joining after-school clubs because their friends now are talking to them and they're saying, you know, hey, well, I want to join that because you're doing that. So our after-school clubs have just exploded, and we're adding more and more just because we have so many kids that want to participate in it now. So again, improved attendance. Our attendance, we've not had the issue, and I know if you're, you know the attendance is an issue because if kids are not in school, they're not going to learn anything. Boosted efficiency, more reading, improved teacher morale. That's huge. That's huge. The teacher retention, that's something we all struggle with. This is make the teacher's job so much easier. There's one less thing they have to deal with. They're just going to come in and teach now. They don't have to fight this right here, right now. Less mid-class absenteeism because ultimately kids don't have to go to the bathroom as much in Warren County as they used to. They're not leaving class to go to the bathroom. Less cheating because that's happened. Hey, can you give me what's the answer to question 8? I'm texting you. Oh, it's such and such. Oh, okay. Teachers got their head here because they're trying to teach. Well, I can't keep my eye on 20 students to see if they're cheating at each other. Less reported stress among students, which is, to me, that's key. That is key. There's less stress that we're putting on our students. But we get to pushbacks. There's always going to be pushbacks. This is not perfect. When a parent or student asks why a policy was changed, we've just got to stand firm on it. Hey, this is what's best for our kids. It may not be popular at the time, but it is what is best for our kids. And that's what we're supposed to be here for. When parents and students state they need to have contact 24/7, we've got these helicopter parents, and maybe you are one, I don't know. But that adds so much more anxiety on kids when they are with their parents 24/7. When they have that 7-hour break away from their parents, it gives them such an independence that they really need to have, because once they get out of high school, they're not going to have that there. So the kids really like that their parents cannot text them all day long. I've talked to so many high schoolers that said that's the best part of it. I can go into that room, I can go into that school, and I don't have to worry about anybody bothering me for the next 7 hours. Safety. Emergency situations. This is where it's key to get Sheriff's Department, your SROs, all the people that are the stakeholders in this part. Because what it shows that students' use of cell phone during untold emergencies can distract their attention. So we're already distracted enough. So all of our teachers, we put in place, we give them safety protocols if something happens. God forbid something happens to our school, our teachers have been trained to what to do, right? If I'm on my phone trying to call my mom, and you're trying to tell me where I need to be, I'm over here trying to talk to somebody and tell them what's going on. I'm not being able to listen to the instructions to get where I need to be. Also, cell phone can be a distraction because what if it goes off and there's a shooter in here? Well, that's going to alert the shooter that somebody is in there. That's going to alert the perpetrator that, hey, I heard a noise going off. There's somebody there. And also what it does is it ties up our emergency lines. That happened in certain situations where the emergency personnel could not get through because the cell phone chatter was so much on the lines, on the emergency lines, they could not get through to who they needed to in emergency situations. It's happened, and you go to a ball game or something, like a professional game, you can't use their internet, or sometimes you can't use your phone because there's so much tied down on that. So if you've got 1,000 students trying to use the phone to call their parents at the same time, and then you're going to have 1,000 parents trying to get on campus at the same time, it leads to an emergency nightmare for the people that are trained to handle these situations. So those are the things that is really key to get SROs, your Sheriff's Department. I promise you, they will be here at your meeting. They came to our meetings. They stood behind us. Our General Sessions Judge, who does our juvenile court, they stand behind us. I actually got a letter. He was on my desk last night at our board meeting. And he said, I want to additionally thank you. We talked about school board appreciation. He said, I want to additionally thank you for the no cell phone policy. It has significantly reduced the number of juvenile court petitions in the court so far this year. So thanks for spearheading that effort. So that's from Judge Moore. This is not just about schools. This is about our whole community. This is about everybody. And we got stakeholders all around. So it's important to get that information out for us. And again, it's been great for us. There's still a lot of parents that are, especially when something happens, hey, I need to get a hold of my kid. Well, what we've done, we've got it through our office staff. Hey, if something goes on, if our coach has, You know, it's one of those, well, what if ball practice has been canceled? Well, it's up to us. We put monitors up in different spots in our school, in our high school, that says, hey, basketball practice has been canceled. So our kids, when they're walking through these common areas, hey, that board says this has been, we don't need to have a text alert or app alert come out. You know, they can look at that. And if most of us, you know, all of our classrooms still have telephones in them. Emergency situations, we can get a hold of a kid somewhere in school. Especially in our elementary schools, there's ways of getting hold of an emergency situation. If you know, if a parent needs to really get a hold of a kid, we've done it for years and years without cell phones. We can still do it today. I said this to our members throughout this whole process, and I still believe this is true, and I believe this, for me as a school board member, it is our job to make sure our students are provided the best environment for learning. There's a lot of things as school board members we cannot do. We can't control a lot of things. We can control policy, though, and we can provide the best environment for learning for our kids. That is our job. Let our teachers teach, let our administrators do their job, but we can help here. We can help them. We can be joint partners with them, and we can do this. And again, it has worked wonders in Warren County. Again, you talked about Sapicki and the House bill that's coming up pretty soon. He's actually reached out to me. He called me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago and asked me if I'd be willing to come testify at the General Assembly on his behalf for this cell phone bill. Again, when you start going through what happened in Antioch Covenant, that kind of puts a bad light on these things. But you know, I told him, sure, we'll come up and talk about it. I talked at the technology conference in Chattanooga. I'm going to be speaking at superintendent or principal's meeting in Smyrna here couple of weeks, I think, about this. Even if you guys were at the TSBA, especially if you're a legislative liaison or in the legislative part, and it was a hot topic. It was debated, and even TSBA said they're not for this. They're not pushing for this. So you know, there's both sides of it. I understand both sides of it. I'm just saying what it done and how it's worked in Warren County has worked very well, and I'm proud of it. And I think we're doing a good job. Is it perfect? No. Are there going to be pushbacks? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's what's best for our students. And we're already seeing those things. And if our kids are more in school, they're more engaged. We don't have data yet that shows our test scores are improved. But in other areas where they have, we found a drastic rise in test scores. And all of our critics in public school are saying that that's what they're going to grade us on, right? I've talked to some guys today. We actually passed a resolution last night about the voucher bill in Warren County. But that's what we're held accountable for, these test scores. So if we can provide some kind of reason to say, hey, look, we're working on these things. It has to improve our kids' education if we do remove these distractions out of the classroom. It has to improve our teacher morale. If we have better teachers with better morale, they're going to be better teachers and they're going to teach better. So that might be all I have. That's all I got. And I'll answer any questions if anybody has any, to the best I can anyways. So.
Questions of anybody?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What, I know that this policy is toward the students. Do you have anything for the teachers as far
yes,
as?
and I missed that part, and I'm glad you
Okay.
mentioned that. I pulled our staff policy out and tightened it up too. And I believe I went by, might have been Williamson County. There was a school district that we went through some of their policies and I looked at it and I was like that. We didn't take the cell phones from our teachers because we felt like that was a need, but they're not allowed to be on their private social media accounts during the school hours. They will be reprimanded if they're caught on their social media apps during school hours, unless they're on at the high school and they're part of the social media team on high school. They are not allowed to engage with a student of any sort, either being a friend or follow on social media, unless it's a family member. That was one we had, in some of the younger grades, there was a little bit of pushback. I had some teachers that didn't like that. And I understand we kind of get wrapped up in our kids and their friends, and I have my daughter's friends try to add me on these things, and I tell them, it's not my job to be your friend, I'm not. So we did push back on that and made sure our administrators say, hey, if your teachers are caught doing these things, it's up to you. We're holding you accountable. If we come in and see, that our teachers are posting stuff on social media during school hours, then hey, they're going to have to be reprimanded for that. And we strictened the policy on that too. I think after the second offense, if they get caught, they automatically get 1 day suspension without pay. And then it the next one just a week without pay, and then you're in trouble big time after that. And I have those policies, and I can send them out to you guys of how we done that, both of these policies and how they read. I mean, our phone policy would just completely cut it out and start it all over with it, but.
One thing,
Where's
Chris,
HB
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Where is HB 13 in the process?
I'm not for sure. It's gotten some mixed reviews, so I think he's really trying to push it. I think they've got some momentum. Like I said, I've not talked to him in a few weeks, and I think through the special sessions, they kind of pushed everything off. But he did say it'd probably be into February before they'd be really pushing on this. So, and other states are starting to do it. You see them, Virginia's done it, Arkansas is doing it. Several states are doing this. And this is not really as strict as ours. It's just saying that every district should have some sort of policy in place. And I think most of them do. It just depends on how strict you want it. And from our research and everything that we've done, the bell-to-bell policy is the best, because it's not going to do any good if you just say you can have it sometimes you can't. Kids are going to bend the rules, and they're going to do their thing.
Chris, one of the things you had talked about earlier, you had talked about, you got, put social media so the parents could be communicated with if case something was to happen, right? You might touch on that.
You talk about social media you're talking about our teachers reaching out to the parents, or?
Right. During school hours, and y'all hired a media person
We
too, right?
hired a communications director that kind of keeps all that in place. So if something happens, pushing all that stuff out on social media, on our accounts, on our district accounts and all that, as soon as we possibly can to get information out of school closings, or, school's got a gas leak or a water pipe, this school's going to be, so we really amp that up as far as getting, and this happened 2 years ago, I think, at leadership. We went into one of the break from Arlington Special School District. They had a presentation at the main conference this year.
Yep.
And that's really what got us focused on having a communications director, because our director was our communications director on top of all the other things he was doing. So that kind of helped him out on that and let him focus a little more. So that, we do push those out as fast as we can to our media, to social media, to everybody that needs to be contacted.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
When you did your survey, I'm really kind of surprised at the number of teachers who weren't for it. Did you, when you did your survey, I'm really surprised at the number of teachers that were opposed. Did you ask those teachers, do you have a student in the school? Because that would have affected.
Well, we didn't really, this was kind of anonymous, so we really didn't know which ones or what, and who did have kids and who didn't. And I think it was just, this was just at the early stages of it, so I think they didn't realize the problem was as big as it was, in some of them. Some of them probably liked it because it helped them out. Hey, we've got 15 minutes left in class. I don't have to teach anymore. I can just let them do something else. And then this year we actually went back to traditional block schedule, so that made our classroom times a lot longer, our instructional times longer, but the retention, it seems like that the kids are getting the information, it seems to be, and our kids are saying they feel like their classes are shorter. That's one of the things the kids are saying, and our classes are longer than they've ever been because we went to traditional block schedule, and they're thinking that their classes are shorter just because they're so much more engaged in the activities and stuff. So, but yeah, I think the teachers at the beginning were just, they didn't know. They wasn't really, they wasn't maybe on that list of the few that come to me and said, hey, we've really got a problem here. Yes, sir.
Chris, I appreciate your service and your concerns and your sharing this and presenting this to us. And we've got to listen to our teachers.
Absolutely.
We've got to listen to our teachers and support them. Mm-hmm. And I know there'll be some parents that would push back on this. I get that.
They are.
I've got a granddaughter that's a senior at Warren County High School. Mm-hmm. And this has taken over her life. Mm-hmm. This has become her God.
Yeah.
And anyway, when she would come see us in the spring or on weekends or whatever, she'd come and she'd get in a room or whatever, and she'd be on that thing and would say to her, let's talk. And it's just like trying to, but anyway, it's become her, it's really impacting her life. And I cannot imagine the emotional trauma and damage this is doing to our students. And think about how it will impact them now. But what about their lives 5 and 10 and 20 years from now?
Long-term effects.
The long-term impact this will have on their lives and their whatever. And the stress is putting on our teachers. It's just not fair to our teachers.
Right.
And I'm very much in support, and I'm gonna suggest we may go ahead and refer this to our policy committee and start reviewing that and amending and adopting something very similar to what Warren County or some of the other counties have. I'm very much in support of that. Thank you for your service.
And again, we can't take care of what things happen outside of our school hours, but we do have a choice. We do have the voice inside of what goes on inside of our schools. And, what happens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they get home, hopefully what we're doing they will learn from this. And it's like, I don't really need that. Like I said, when you go to our basketball games, you see kids now that are just running all over the place, back and forth, and 4 or 5 kids strung together, and they're not just sitting there on their phones. And it's really a different culture out there in just a short amount of time. So,
Can you
And-
share your, oh, go ahead.
And our granddaughter, we haven't seen her since March.
Okay.
She used to come over all the time, but now she just kind of,
we're losing this generation of kids. We're really just losing them in general. And I've been a small business owner for 20-something years, and I know when I hire people that are out of high school and these things, it's not even hardly human because they have no social cues whatsoever. They can't interact with each other. People that are around all day long, they can't even interact with them without having that phone in their hand.
we need to listen to our teachers, and I strongly support our teachers and what's,
I would suggest even a simple survey. Grab a few teachers and do what I told them. Hey, write all that down and let them, and then show that. When you show that picture, when you show these pictures of what's going on in our classrooms, like this is not something we pulled off the internet. This is not. Get back to it. This is not something we pulled off the internet. This come out of Warren County High School. This come out of a history class. This come out of a biology class. This come out of a shop class. This come out of, I didn't just take certain, I went through the ones that I knew, hey, will you do this for me? And then when you show this to people, and they're like, 15 minutes of class, this is what our teachers are dealing with? That's what really got my eye open to it. And then once you start looking at the data, and when you start seeing the research that's been put into this, and like I said, the mental aspects of this to our kids, we owe it to them. So, thank you.
Can you share your policy with us?
I will. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Then we can kind of refer to our.
Yep, I'll send that and our staff policy that we revised too.
Yeah, although I suspect we're probably gonna wanna look at how the legislation shakes out.
And again, I think that legislation's just gonna be a broad,
Yeah,
it's not gonna be anything
So
hard.
we
It's
may
gonna kind of
wanna-
leave it up to us to make our own,
yeah, we may wanna start looking at that right away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you can share that.
I sure will. Yeah, I'll
very
send it out to everybody. Yeah.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
How important was the background stuff that you did for this to be a successful program? Getting with your judge, getting with your SRO officers?
I think getting all the stakeholders in our community together is key. Because again, the parents are gonna be the last people on board for the most part. Now, some parents were overjoyed with this. But there's gonna be those, and there's still some that push back on it. But once you start seeing community leaders that are trying to come together, not just in this board, they're not looking at all that school board just trying to, impose their will on, they don't understand. We do understand. Again, we've got kids, we've got grandkids, we've got people that we know that's in these school systems. 4 of our 6 board members have kids in Warren County schools. So, we have it's not only affecting, it's affecting my family too. So, but it is important. I feel like it was key to getting Judge Moore out, and it was something key for him to get to these kids. When you see you look at your court advocate for your kids. I don't know if you've got CASA here or something, but you look at some of these kids that they don't have parents at home. They don't have people that's helping them. They don't have people that's leading them, and they're in and out of trouble all the time, and they're going through the court system. They don't have anybody on their side. And when you start seeing that, and you start seeing these are the things we're starting to look at when you start seeing discipline issues, when you start looking at what goes on in a school shooter's mind, what goes on in these kids why are our kids go ahead and send them to alternative school? It's not because they have parents at home that are really got their back. It's because they don't have anybody, and it's up to us to. But again, like I said, the SROs, your sheriff's department, I promise you they're right on with us.
Any other questions?
This doesn't have anything to do with this. I was just interested if you would share your resolution on vouchers. Did you say?
We passed that. We did not support this voucher bill that's going.
So you did it as a board?
We did as a board.
Thank you.
We sure did. We're a 6-member board, and it was 6-0 last night, and we talked about it, and, you know, we discussed it in length last night at our meeting, and like I said, I've talked to people, I've interviewed with the radio station this morning, and, you know, hey, it's there on there if you want to look at it and see where we all stand and how we feel about it, you know. It's, you know, not that we're against vouchers or competition, it's, this bill just, I think it was the way to go, so. And hopefully our state senator says he's against it, and he's going to vote against it, we'll see.
Thank you for this presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right.
And I would say, if I may, Mr. Chairman, as we're wrapping up, I want to thank Mr. Westmoreland and his team for what they do with about 110 people under his oversight. And we'll never know some of the issues and the challenges and the concerns and the situations that some of his team has to encounter every day with mental health issues and whatever. And this, no doubt, is contributing to a lot of that.
Bring good counselors involved. School counselors too are huge to
Yeah.
give you some feedback because they are on the front lines of a lot of these issues. You know, so, just see, as many people in the community as possible, I promise you, once you start getting this information out, they'll be in here to say, hey, yeah, we're behind you, 100%.
Jackie was involved with it too, with it.
Jackie,
didn't he?
yeah,
Jackie was a
he
big,
comes to those safety summits
Yeah.
we have, and we're still doing it. We'll still rotate schools. We do a couple a
Yeah.
year and just talk to these
talking,
kids. and
talking
stuff.
about Jackie Matheny, the sheriff up there. He's really involved in it too, so
Yep.
we get Chad involved and
So, yeah.
thank you, Chris.
Anytime, you know, y'all got
Appreciate
any
you.
questions, just feel free to shoot me an email and talk to Scott. We can get you some information all you need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Ms. Matthews is going to lead the discussion on teacher appreciation program.
Am I next?
You're next. You're on. The spotlight is
You're
on
on,
you.
Holly.
Okay, all right. So, I guess a lot of times, as board members, sometimes we aren't faced with things that are all that fun or more work than we thought. But I feel like this is something that we can put a positive spin on. This is one of the more fun things that we can talk about. But when I was at the convention, when we were all at the convention in November, there was, I don't remember who the speaker was, but they were talking about ways to motivate teachers, staff, employees, and they brought up doing an employee spotlight type program where we recognize our teachers for not just teachers, but in my opinion, it should go beyond teachers. It should go classified and non-classified. But just honor them and recognize them from time to time. There's a whole lot that could go into it. You could make it probably as complicated or as easy as we wanted to, but I just want your ideas. I have some ideas, and I would love to hear what you guys have in mind for recognizing our teachers and showing them that we really appreciate them, and not just our teachers, but like I said, our aides, our transportation department, our food service workers, our office personnel, our custodians, people that really make the wheels turn, don't need to be overlooked. And so there's, you know, unlimited ways it could be structured. Some of the questions I have, you know, how, you know, would you want to break it up in grade level, K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12? I'm open to anything, okay? How, you know, how would you select who was recognized? Based on what criteria? Who would select? What kind of input would we want to get? I even thought it might be good if we could get parents' input. I know as a parent, raising my daughter through, she's an 8th now, I have tried to, along the way, when I feel like a teacher has gone above and beyond for her or any group of students, make a point to reach out and tell them how much you appreciate it. And it means a lot. It means a lot to teacher, an aide, an office worker. Somebody checked your student in, they were super kind, and, you know, it's just, if we can reach our employees on a positive note, I think it would be really good for our entire system and our community as a whole. So I just want y'all's ideas on how you think we could structure it, how many, you know, we would want to recognize at a time. Like I said, I think, you know, if it were up to me, it would be recognizing both a classified and a non-classified employee, each grade, like K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. We can do it however you guys want to do it. I don't care. Is it something that we would want to even reach out to local businesses to sort of sponsor, like a bank, you know? I don't know that there needs to be any actual prize or gift. You know, a lot of times that really doesn't mean a lot. It's more of just being recognized and feeling appreciated. But all of those things, we can collaborate together and figure out what is best. Obviously, we don't want to probably spend a lot of money or a whole lot of time, but Tom, I think you and I talked about maybe a quarterly luncheon for those who are recognized and letting them know that we appreciate them. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, could just be like the lunch we did yesterday or pizza, whatever, just to get those employees that we're recognizing that quarter or that semester, however often you want to do it, together and let them know that they are appreciated, that we do recognize their efforts. We got a lot of teachers who definitely do go above and beyond. And this is more like, we get a lot of complaints, but I would love to see us spin that in a positive direction and show appreciation and recognition. So,
Mr. Shores, you had some experience with that in the past. I think Mr. Henley had a program, something
Yes,
similar that you mentioned.
our former board member, Mr. Henley, did that for several years. He did a spotlight on employees, and that was once a week. That it was actually, he made a, I don't know who, I'm assuming he did it. He made a certificate, sent it out by email to everybody all emails. So everybody got to see it, and it recognized the employee for the week.
I like that.
So how long would you take if we all kind of threw things together to maybe compile a list and where we can then discuss it in the future work session and then basically approve it at a board meeting? How long do you think that would take to do? So,
Really have no idea. Probably just depend on how many ideas, how much input we get. So I'm soliciting all of you for ideas. I'll help throw it together. If somebody else wants to take it, that's okay too.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up and get the ball rolling, and so that we can, and you know, if we don't want to, you know, like you said, get on an agenda, if we don't want to start it till next school year,
Yeah.
you know, because we got a lot going on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
And we can decide, you know, is it weekly, is it monthly, is it quarterly? You know, who decides and how is it decided? And there's a lot that could go into it. Like I said, we don't probably need to make it more complicated than it is, but
Some of the things
can-
that I took a picture of this whenever we was down there. One of
Yeah.
the things is they have the monthly employee spotlight. This was some of the ways to feel valid and supported and heard. That was the guy that was the spokesperson for TSBA, wasn't it?
yeah, yes.
And there was the monthly spotlight, choose an administrative team, supported by a local bank, $100 cash reward, publicly celebrated, quarterly lunch celebrations, hosted by, funded and by the district, ended quarterly, even the superintendent birthday messages
Yes, I
was one
remember
of
that.
them. And the superintendent's leadership roundtable, mixed and celebrated, classified. You know, there's so many, I took a picture of that, because I thought about the same thing too, but, there's so many things on here. Social media shout outs, stories of employees and their students drive, district newsletters, just a few things.
Yeah, I remember that slide. I took notes on it, so yeah. All those are wonderful ideas. So you guys just, let us know.
Read out some-
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Holly.
agree that that's something that we should do.
Amen.
And I do think that the criteria will be very important, because there's a lot of employees and teachers, classified or non-classified employees, that do an excellent job day in and day out
Yes.
and never get recognized. They don't want to be recognized.
Right.
And I can think of 2 or 3 teachers during my tenure up here. They were excellent,
Yes.
never got recognized. They didn't want to be, but
Right.
when I think of excellence in teaching, I think of those people.
Yeah.
And they're not the ones that's going to write up an application to be Teacher of the Year. Or
Right.
what, they're not going to push themselves out there.
Right.
They're in the classroom working with those kids.
Yes.
And hopefully that's why we can recognize some of
Right.
those type employees.
That are not,
Like, lunch
recognizing
ladies.
themselves.
They're wonderful.
yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
it's just
Bus
us
drivers.
showing up one day, just pick a day and show up like Publishers Clearinghouse with balloons and clouds.
that'd
And just
be
make a big
cute.
deal so
Exactly.
that all the kids see and the rest of the staff
Yeah.
see.
Well, that'd
That
be
makes
cute.
you feel good as an adult to have
Yeah.
recognition like
Yeah,
that.
something
So
different.
just
Definitely.
something simple even would
Right,
be
it doesn't
great.
have to be that complicated.
It's a
I
really
don't
good
think.
idea, Holly.
So,
Well, I'd like to see teachers recognized, and then classified employees recognized kind of
Yes.
separately, so that everybody gets it.
absolutely.
Yeah, so you're not throwing them all in,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, our classified employees are critically important to this system in this
Right.
county,
Yes.
Yeah.
and we need to honor them. I totally agree.
Absolutely.
whether you do it weekly or monthly, yeah, you have one for each, yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
that's, yeah, so I guess, but, maybe we can all get our ideas and run them through Holly, and you can kind of pull them together, and when you
Yep.
feel like you're ready,
Yeah.
then, we can get you back on a work session
Okay.
agenda, and we can, start working on putting together the program, because
Yep.
it's certainly a worthwhile program.
I think so.
Like you
Sounds
say,
good.
maybe start next year or.
Right,
Yeah.
Because we have so much on our plate,
exactly. But
but start working on it.
Start the year
Where it'll
off
be
like that.
effective.
Yeah, we can call this the
Yeah.
Holly Show.
I don't know about that.
Holly Price.
Frida said something that I think we have to recognize. She said, I worked in a system with 3 teachers that were excellent and never noticed. I think that those within the system, those who are within the classified in a certain field, they know who those people are.
Yeah.
So it could be that they pick them out themselves, and then we get to honor them. It's not
Right.
picked out by the
Right.
director, it's not
Right.
picked out by the
Somebody
principal.
fined for it.
It's,
Exactly.
yeah, those in the trenches with them say,
I
this
agree.
is an excellent person.
I agree with that.
I think one of the things Mr. Henley had done at the time was you could nominate somebody, make a nomination to him that you want to nominate to get the spotlight of the week. And that's one of the ways he looked at it, but that's just an idea.
And like I said, parental, and, if there's a parent out there, we want to pull parents in more anyway. And so if there's a parent out there that knows that their child got, a teacher went above and beyond, and they're really, impressed by something, email us, let us know.
Yep.
So we want to know all those good things. We get a lot of complaints, but we want to know the good too.
Well,
Because there's a lot of good.
That's really a good point, because I think one of the things we heard during some of these talks we had yesterday was
Yeah.
that the parents didn't feel like they were involved enough, and we
Right.
really want to change that.
We do want to change that,
So, yeah,
definitely.
for all the folks out there in YouTube land, we're going to work on it.
That's right. So, thank you very much.
All right? Is that,
Thank you, Holly.
any
Thank you.
more questions or comments for Holly? So, all right. Then, next up, we have Jennifer is wants to talk about substitute teacher policy, and I believe there's the handbook for substitute teachers in your packet. So, you're on, Jennifer.
All right. So I'm pretty passionate about this particular subject, and you will understand why when I'm finished. So don't worry about me when I turn bright red. I'm going to be okay. Let me climb up on this soapbox here.
You're among
We will
friends
start. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I highlighted some of my favorite parts of our handy dandy substitute handbook here. I want to go over those, and then I promise I do have a point, and we will get to it. So, one of the roles of a substitute teacher, they need to be very flexible, creative, and competent. Something that they should do is be favorably received by pupils, and they should have informal evaluations by school administration. Substitute teachers who performed below a level considered acceptable will be removed from the substitute list. Remember that. Substitute teachers are representatives of the entire Coffee County school system, so they need to be on top of their game. Substitute teachers should always maintain a professional attitude towards work and responsibilities. It is imperative that all employees of the Coffee County school system project an appropriate professional image for the students and community. Each employee will show a high degree of respect for the standards of decency, cleanliness, and style generally accepted by the school and community. Substitute teachers are employees of the director of schools and work under the direction of the school principal. They should not get into personal conversations with the students. They should follow all school and classroom rules. They should be positive and pleasant. They should never use sarcasm. Treat each child the way you would want your own child treated. Treat all students with respect and dignity. Be fair and consistent, friendly and firm. Leave a good impression with other teachers, administration, and students. Great substitutes view themselves as professionals. They use positive reinforcement strategies. They make it a priority to develop a classroom climate which encourages interaction and cooperation. They are respectful to students, and they are a positive role model. All last semester, beginning in the first week of school, I have been getting emails from upset parents about substitutes. Many of these complaints were about one substitute in particular. So much so that, I'm not naming names, don't worry. So much so that I became very familiar with this man because I heard about him so often. I heard about him so often that I actually warned my own children, if you are around this man, be on your best behavior and watch out. I encourage these parents to reach out to their principals, to the director of schools, to anybody, because there's only so much I can do as a school board member. A lot of these parents feared repercussions. They feared that their child would be singled out, and I understand that completely. I'm not like that. I have a big, loud mama mouth, so whenever my own child had an interaction with this substitute, I was loud about it, and I've continued to be loud about it, and nothing has been done about it because we don't have a policy in place to easily get rid of substitutes that don't deserve to be there. I'll pass this around, I just wrote it down. There are a state law that we could adopt, if you want to read that, into our policies. Our current policy is pretty simple, and there are not certain things listed, mess up here and you're out. Like, we need more specific rules for these substitutes. Ours says, on an annual basis, the director of schools, with input from the principal, shall determine which substitute teachers performed at an acceptable level. Substitute teachers who perform below an acceptable level shall not be re-employed. All substitutes shall be responsible for providing correct addresses. That doesn't really apply to this. But that's it. That's all it says. So there's no clear line on when to get rid of someone. So in October, my child had an interaction that was not okay with this substitute. I followed the chain of command. I did what I was supposed to do. I also emailed the school board. You all know about this already. I emailed the director of schools, and in Dr. Lawson's defense, he left the next day, so he did not have a chance to take care of it, and then Dr. Powell immediately was dropped in the middle of this big mess. Sorry about that. But there's been no resolution. This man who has committed so many offenses is still in the classroom, but he's been reprimanded to where he can't be alone with students. We have a substitute who's not allowed to be alone with students, but he's still there in a classroom. There are parents who will not allow their child to be in this man's presence, and we're sending those kids to a different class instead of getting rid of this substitute. And he's not the only one. There are so many wonderful, amazing people that should have been teachers that are employed by us as substitutes right now. But there are some horrible, terrible role models that are out there with our kids. They're scaring them. They're being aggressive. They're calling them names. They're breaking Chromebooks when they get mad. And we're letting them stay in our classrooms. I just can't express, I don't have the words to express how ridiculous I think it is that we're not just letting them go when they're terrible. I've been told that substitutes are hard to come by, so we give them grace. I don't give grace like that. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I think something needs to be done. One of the slides we just looked at said, as school board members, it is our job to make sure our students are provided the best environment for learning as possible. And we are not doing any favors to anyone by keeping people that don't deserve the privilege of being in our schools, in our schools.
And I would just add that according to TCA 49-2-203, which defines the duties of a school board, paragraph 14 does allow the board to make policy concerning substitute teachers. So
I think that we should do it. We should really think about it and give some guidelines on what to do when this happens.
I totally agree. I support that.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I have a question. If teachers are employed at will, wouldn't substitute teachers be employed at will?
They are, but I believe it's up to the principal to dismiss them or just not call them back, but we are still calling them back.
or okay, there you go.
Yes.
Question, do you want to ask the question?
No.
I'm just asking for clarification, because I think we kind of thought the same thing.
Yes.
Substitute teachers don't sign a contract with us. They are not contracted employees, so they would only be at will.
Exactly, but when we're calling them every single day, even when they have committed offenses,
Yeah, I'm just asking,
I don't,
at will, and
That's-
yeah.
It should be.
I think
Yeah.
that's what
They are.
Mr. Cornelius is getting at, is they're at will, meaning, don't call them back.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly,
You
but
know,
the
they
problem
breach
is,
contract,
Right.
we're calling them back. We're not calling it breaches. We're calling them back because we so desperately, I've been told, need them. That it doesn't matter who they are or how they're acting, we need them anyway. So we're putting ourselves at risk for lawsuits.
Yes, we
Okay,
are.
I'm going to disagree on that. Whenever somebody contacts myself or Dr. Powell or a principal about a situation, no matter if it's a substitute, if it's a teacher, if it's an aide, classified worker, it's going to be checked into. If disciplinary actions need to be taken, those are going to be taken. It's going to be handled. Everything that is turned into a principal or us does not, and I can tell you, there's several times you're going to get a call saying they need to be fired. They need to be gone. And the job that we have as administrators is to check into the situation, to investigate it, and then to make a judgment on what we need to do at that time. It's taken care of. It's done. Now, am I saying that every time that decision is made that the parent's going to be happy with the decision? No, they want them fired. They want them gone. They want them out. They want them. It's automatic. But that's not always the case. We
Mr.
have
Shorts.
to set. We have to check into it. We do so, and then we make a judgment call in what needs to be done. Disciplinary actions need to be taking place, and so forth. And that's what's done. Dr. Powell, is there anything that you would want to add with that?
I'd like to add before
I do believe that the school board in session did send down a recommendation for an investigation about 2 different matters, including one of these, that no one, including the parents, has heard a word about. No answer, no discussion, no investigation or checking out or whatever. To my knowledge, there's no information been done, and I'm not so, I guess, was there did you do what the board said in October?
Okay, I think, I remember one with that, and I remember that was when Dr. Lawson was, being dismissed, and it was said during that meeting for the new director,
Yes.
the interim director, to take that, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Powell, but I do know that Dr. Powell has worked on that,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to talk
Well,
about Dr. Powell.
I'm just saying that because, you know, you made it quite clear that the moment you get something like that, it's fully vetted, fully investigated, you know, if action needs to
Well-
be taken, action's taken.
And I will even go far enough, I don't.
We're 4 months
Yeah.
past that.
Exactly. In the situation that you're talking about, the one that was actually brought up in the decision and what was discussed at that time, like I said, that's for Dr. Powell. I do know that Dr. Powell has worked on that. He's gonna speak for himself on that. I don't
Right.
speak for Dr. Powell. But I can tell you that, and I'm not gonna get into the specifics of it, but I did receive an email from Ms. Hodge and Dr. Lawson got it at the same time, and I don't care to say, as soon as I got it, I went over to Dr. Lawson and said, we gotta check into this, because it sounded bad. And he said, well, I'm gonna get started on that. He started it, and then, y'all know what happened. And I contacted Ms. Hodge, and I said, Dr. Lawson's no longer here. I'm gonna take this and investigate it. I did that. I took care of it the way I felt like it needed to be handled as an administrator and handle the situation. And do I think that Ms. Peacock Hodge, she'll have to speak for it, and apparently she is not approve of the way I handled it, but I did handle it. It was taken care of. I've explained that to Dr. Powell. He's aware of my position and the way we went about it. And then he's handled the other situation.
Were you included on the emails, I believe 3 or 4 days ago? Coming back in from the same complainant?
No.
Let me just
No.
interpose here is, I, before this meeting, I had a discussion with Dr. Powell, and he is going to send out a confidential email to the, because we do have a closed loop from that resolution we
Yes.
had in the October meeting. He is going to send out a confidential email to the board members explaining what the situation is, and that, because it's a personnel matter, that
Right.
it requires, you know, confidentiality, but
Yeah, I don't necessarily
He's gonna
need to
do
know
that,
the
yeah.
specifics, but
Yeah.
we keep getting emails and keep getting
Right, right, right.
notifications of issues,
Yeah.
and it's like
yeah,
nothing.
it's,
But hopefully there is some.
So-
yeah, we talked about it, and there's a loop that needs to be closed, and so he's gonna send out an email. If we have any discussion after that, then, you know, we can go from there, but you will be receiving something on that, so we did talk.
Thank you,
My
Mr. Ballard.
question, I'm sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
My question is, I think the situation that I'm in particularly talking about, my personal one, let alone all the other ones, was very serious. So I guess I'm asking, what are your guidelines into stopping the calling back of someone? Because if you can tell a child he's going to be your human shield if there is really a shooter and you can keep your substitute job, how much worse does it have to get before you aren't called back anymore? To me, that is very serious. And yes, it was my own child, but if it were any of your children, I would be just as mad. That's not okay. And it wasn't just my kid. Other people said so. And nothing has been done about it.
Okay, I want to respond to that. Once again, you investigate it as an administrator, you check it out. It doesn't make any difference if a substitute, teacher, aide, any classified worker, anybody works in our system, you check into it. You get one side of what you're hearing. You know what that side is. It's going to be skewed to the side of what you're hearing. After you investigate it, you make a decision from it. You move on, and that's where I went with it. And I will tell you that it was handled, it was investigated, and it was handled the way it was felt like it needed to be handled. And that's any situation with any educator, student, any employee. You investigate and you take care of the situation. Our teachers deal with it on a regular basis. They have to make judgment calls. Teachers do, your principals do, we do, and that's after the investigation.
But do you have a set line that you do not cross and we're not calling you back, or is it just personal opinion?
And this has been told to our principals, they are very aware of it. I have actually taken these actions as a administrator of a building, and that is a substitute doing something that I felt was inappropriate, that was not appropriate for our students, and I escorted them to the door, said, we will not be calling you back, and that was the end of it. Then the calls made to the central office was made to basically remove them from the list, and they are no longer called. So yes, there are limitations.
Dr. Powell?
On the second information that has come up, I have investigated that. Circumstances beyond my control, had to postpone it for a period of time. It has been reinvestigated. I've talked with the principal and the person that was involved in it. I have not written a report up yet. I have the information from that, and that will be written up and given to those that were involved in it. But it has been reinvestigated.
I have a question about that, though. You said that the person that we're referring to is not allowed to be around children?
That's what I was told by
On
Dr.
their own?
Powell. You're the only one that can explain that. I only know what you've told me. That he has to have supervision in the
We
classroom.
probably don't need to get into discussions that deep on that
Yeah.
kind of matter here. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just quite frankly, and that's my only aggression towards this, is I'm tired of hearing it. I'm tired of getting the emails from a parent concerned and nothing's being
Yeah.
done. When we're all adults, we can do something about it.
And it's not just
And
me.
that's my only issue.
There have been,
If
I'm
something
just,
has been done about it, fine, but it apparently, not everybody's been made aware of the results.
Yeah, and they will be.
I've
Yeah,
been
and they will be,
speaking-
fine. I don't need to know it. I don't want to know.
I've been speaking for everyone that I've gotten emails from, everyone who's upset. They're being ignored by their principal, and I'm being ignored as a school board member who knows who to talk to. So I can't imagine what it feels like just to be one of them, and they don't know who to call. It's not fair. It's not right for you to worry about who's around your kid. You should feel like they're safe.
We can't let things get to this point.
Yes,
That's all- that's what I'm
exactly.
saying.
I want clear-cut policy on this.
And once again, Ms. Peacock Hodge did come and reported it as a parent, not as a school board member.
Yes.
It was investigated, so it was not ignored, and it was handled. And a contact was made back to a parent to let them know that it was investigated and it was handled. And I will stand up and say, when our principals hear things, they're investigating it, they are checking into it as well. I could not imagine a principal that is ignoring a parent that is turning in a complaint. Now, I can't say that definitely, but I couldn't imagine any of our principals ignoring a complaint. I just couldn't.
I was told that substitutes are hard to come by. So we'll let him know that wasn't very nice.
Okay, and I heard one principal say that substitutes are hard to come by. I will tell you, substitutes are hard to come by. I will not tell you, and I could not imagine one of our principals saying, substitutes are hard to come by, so they're gonna get away with anything they wanna do, we're gonna keep them.
That's how it
That's
felt.
two different things there. Substitutes are hard to come by, teachers are hard to come by, but we're gonna make sure we have people that are good for our kids.
I make the recommendation that we've heard about this, we heard about both cases, we were notified about it the 1st of September, everyone was. And here we are in January.
Right.
The end of January, going into February the next year.
And that is why we will be getting a letter if there's
Finish it.
any,
Please,
Yeah.
y'all.
It is. it's something that was not resolved, that we, you know, made a directive to, but it's, you know, but hopefully this will be, you know, we'll
Something.
get the email from Dr. Powell, and if it's not still resolved, then we will,
And not just for me.
Let us
I'm
know.
not trying to make this personal. I want everybody to be heard, and I want it to be in place where everyone is safe. And
Okay.
I don't like getting ugly up here. Y'all forgive me, Mr. Shores, you
Oh,
too.
you're good.
I'm not mad at anybody. I'm mad at the substitute.
And I want to say one more thing, because I told Ms. Hodge this, and I want to make sure we keep referring to every once in a while the YouTube land. If you have a problem and you've got somebody that's being treated wrong because of an adult, you need to report it to your administrator. You need to let the teacher know, you need to let the administrator know, so they can take care of it. To be honest, this is the only one I've heard from was
Yes.
Ms. Hodge, and I've told her, tell them to get in touch with their principal.
Don't be afraid of retaliation. You have to do
Absolutely.
this and put it out
That's
there
a
in the
big thing
world.
with
Yes.
a lot of these parents, from coaches all the way down to teachers, everything else, they don't want their kids to feel the repercussions of stuff. And so they come to us, right?
Oh, I'm
Well-
sure I'm in trouble when I get home for everything I've said
Yeah.
right now.
Well,
But sometimes you got to speak up, and
Yeah.
you are protecting
Yeah.
your child
That's
when
right.
you speak up.
and I believe in this particular case, she felt she had followed the chain of command, and she didn't get satisfaction, which is why it came before the board, and, you know, that's kind of the story there.
In any situation similar to this, even though whoever's doing the investigating may have done the reinvestigating, they may have made a decision, but that doesn't mean that everyone is going to be acceptable to what that decision was. And that may be the situation that I'm dealing with. What I come back out with to those that are involved in it, they may not agree with it. But at least we did what we felt like was best. They probably didn't agree that that was the best thing to do. But nonetheless, I think we have to consider that and take that into consideration that you're not going to please everyone regardless of what you do, good, bad, or indifferent. I want it to be investigated. It should be. And I think any complaint that comes to our principals, that comes to the central office, to myself, or Mr. Shores, or any of the other supervisors that are in charge of certain programs, I hope those things are investigated. They should be. If they're not, we need to know that. But just because it's investigated doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be satisfied with what the results might or might not be. You hope it is, but it doesn't necessarily go that way.
Thank you, Jen, for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Can I,
Yep.
Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like we definitely need to make some policy changes, some updates.
Yes.
The policy is extremely vague. There needs to be some specific criteria on there that we can fall back on that will allow us to take some action. I personally received 2 complaints on this particular substitute myself. I encourage those 2 parents to email Dr. Powell, explaining their concerns. From what I know, they did. I don't think they've heard back on it, as maybe the investigation was going on. But this is not a tenured teacher. If I'm not mistaken, is it a matter of just not calling the person back? I mean, like how, we have to protect our kids, and how hard is it? You know, if this person is in question multiple times by multiple parents, multiple students, why are we continuing to make that call? I know substitutes are hard to come by, but we have to err on the side of caution when it comes to our kids, in my opinion. So definitely, I think the policy needs to have updates, and we need to listen to our parents.
I agree with what all of you are saying. Let me throw this in as far as substitutes are concerned. There has not been, to my information that I've received, and that's no excuse for what's happened. Please understand that. We haven't had, the system hasn't had substitute training like they used to have. It's fallen by the wayside, in all honesty. We blame everything on COVID, but from what I understand, this is where it started from. The person that was in charge of doing this in-service for the teachers, or for the substitute teachers, is no longer with the system, and out of default, no one has picked it up. I have assigned one of our direct supervisors to be in charge of substitute teachers for the coming year. They will have in-service as they've had in the past, but we have failed to do that for the last couple of years, is my understanding, and that's a fault that we'll take. But it has been rectified in terms of someone being in charge of it and taking charge of substitute teacher in service. I know we used to bring them in at the first part of the year, usually a couple of times a year, because you have substitute teachers that are coming in every 3 or 4 days in some cases, that they want to come in, they want to leave, they want to come back, et cetera, et cetera. And we have failed in that situation of doing a full-time staff development for those substitute teachers. But that will be back again in the coming school year, I would assume, because a director's been assigned to that task. And we'll go back to that, and hopefully, and you folks need to come up with some set policies, because it's just that if you looked at the handbook, I know you haven't had time to look at it. I know Jennifer has, because I've given her one, and we've looked at them, and there's no set policies necessarily in there as far as A, B, C, D. So those things do need to be taken care of, and that's what we're challenged with in the next couple of 3 months before school starts next year, to have those policies in place. And when that in-service takes place, then those will be given to the substitute teachers. Here's what we expect. You would think that they should know anyway, but that's not happening necessarily. There have been substitutes dismissed, not since I've been here, but from what I understand from Mr. Shores. But we've fallen down on that situation, to be honest with you. We, being the school system, for the last couple of years, it just got overlooked, I guess. I'm not sure. I can't give an explanation for it. I don't think anyone intentionally didn't do anything about it, but it hasn't been on our radar, but it is now, will be, and I'm assuming that the new director will have some guidance to you folks and to the supervisor that's been in charge of them, to set policies, set the handbook up again, redo that. So that's where we are right now with it.
If I may add, go ahead, Freda. Ladies
Dr.
first.
Powell, I appreciate what you're saying,
Thank you.
because that, and I know all of you saw on the news where they were saying that the substitute teachers there at Antioch had not gone through a program for safety of what to do in case of a shooter or anything like that. So that definitely, I appreciate you putting somebody on this, because that needs to be a part of it also, that every substitute teacher has in-service or training on how to handle an emergency situation.
Ms. Jones, that's actually law.
I know it is law, but they said that they did not have it.
I was going to explain for ours.
Yeah.
By law, we have to do that. That is being done by each school. It has to be done by each individual school before a substitute goes into that school to.
And you have documentation of it?
We do.
Good.
At each
because
school,
I know Antioch didn't.
Each principal has to have a meeting with that substitute and go over those before they're able to actually go into the classroom and start for the day. So, I mean, that's been told to them regularly. And
What, you
we
have a form or something that's signed off by both of them?
They actually have documentation. Now, each school is using their own documentation, but see, each school has specific things that they do, and they could be just a little different from one school to another on emergency plans and so forth. That's the reason why each school has to do it. And such as those emergency trainings, you can't do them at one spot, because it might be just a little different at this school or a little different at this school. So each principal has been directed that before a substitute starts subbing in their school, that they have to go through this training with them and explain it before they even start. So,
Right. So
and they
maybe
are
that
to
could be
keep
part of the-
documentation of that information.
Dr. Powell, maybe that could be part of the person that's over this, to
Yes,
have
it-
some kind of uniform, so that we're not, when you can say, look, this is when that happened, and this is who signed off on it.
What we hope to do, or what should be done, is the fact that there should be something in the entire substitute teacher, staff development, or in-service, whatever you might want to call it. And then there's some general things that should take place at all schools. And then, as Mr. Shore said, he and I had a conversation about this this last week, to be honest with you. That individual schools have different methods of doing things, even though it may not because of their facility and what have you. But I hope we'll get it'll be put in the substitute teacher folder. These are general things that you would do in the case of an emergency, but your individual school principal needs to tell you if there's anything specific just to their particular school, because everyone has different doors to go out of. They have different places to go, different signals and things for various and sundry things that may take place, drills and so forth. Those have changed, as you may or may not know. There's some safety things that are in the schools that are not necessarily known by everyone, and they will not be known by everyone. Safety issues, we have a meeting this week to talk about some issues like that. It's a closed meeting because everyone doesn't need to know what happens in certain situations, but we are directing that, we are working toward that, and that will be something that will hopefully be put in the general substitute teacher in service, and then they will talk to the individual principals about specifics for their particular school.
And Jen and Holly, if you have specific recommendations you'd
Yes.
like to see put in policy, then go ahead and send them to me, and I'll get them out to the policy committee and Mr. Shores.
I mean, I think it should be more common sense, but apparently these people don't have that, so, you
When you
know.
refer to these people, are you speaking to the administrators or
I'm
just the
talking
general
about the substitutes
popula-
that are
I
acting
agree
up.
with you.
Well, I agree with
The
that.
ones that are
I
just
haven't-
out there, it's
I
like,
haven't disputed,
really?
I haven't disputed a thing you've said all
Yes,
night.
sir.
But if we want to change policy, then we need some recommendations
I know,
that we
I
can
know.
Yeah.
pass along to the policy committee.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I'd like to add to this, not to complicate or confuse the situation, but part of me would suggest that we may want to look at our pay that we're paying our subs and increase it a little bit. Because I know sometimes, like the old saying goes, sometimes you get what you pay for. But anyway, I thought
That's a good point.
I just thought I'd toss it out. Now, I will share this. I'm not saying we need to do this, but I know a sub teacher in state of Nebraska, you don't want me to tell you what they're making.
Understand, I believe we increased substitute.
We did a
pay.
little bit.
Yeah,
We have twice.
We did a little bit, but we may need to do it again. I'm serious on that.
yeah,
Because we got to take care of our people and pay them a fair wage
I understand, but
for their service.
we got a budgeting process going on.
We did increase pay for subs. I think it was 2 years ago. So just want to advise to be careful with what we increase it to, because sometimes those subs will make more than our own staff.
Yeah, so you gotta,
So
yeah, you gotta be careful of how it affects the whole structure. So would that be, recommendations on policy changes?
Yes.
I'd be more than happy to
Yes,
get that
please.
out to the policy committee.
I would like policy, I would like more clear guidelines.
Okay.
I would like for only the best of people to be around our children.
Yeah, just something clear so we can get that to the,
I have one more thing. I think, being a substitute is a very difficult position to be in. I wouldn't personally want to try it. No matter what we can pay or what we can't, it's probably not enough for the job they're doing. So it is a difficult job, maybe even a thankless job from time to time. But I believe that like I said, we have to protect our kids. And if we've got parents that are requesting their children be pulled when that substitute is filling in for their child's class, kids are having to go sit in the office instead of staying in class because of one substitute. I think we should take some some action in that regard. And like I said, if a policy will enable us to do that, a policy change, let's get on it. But yeah, the substitutes do have a very difficult job, and we appreciate them. But also, you know, if you're a principal or an assistant principal and you know that you've got substitutes in your building, it might be a good idea to walk down the hall, check on that substitute. Check in with them. Do you need anything? Can I support you in any way? Because their job is difficult. And that substitute, you know, they're not formally trained in this area, probably. Some of them may be certified teachers, but they're not in the school every day, day in, day out. They may not know the teachers next to them. And I think, you know, as an administrator, as a principal, as an assistant principal, as a guidance counselor, walk down the hall and check on your substitutes. Are the kids giving them a hard time? Because they do. They try to get by with more with a substitute. I did. We all probably did. So I think, you know, that our administration could probably support. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. That may happen. I don't know. But if we could just be more cognizant of, I've got substitutes in the building, they may feel out of place. I want to go check in on them. Do you need anything?
Ms. Matthews, I'll agree with you, and I think that our principals we'll discuss it in our next principals meeting.
Okay.
To check in those folks. I know when I was principal back many moons ago, which was a whole different ballgame than what we have now, I would try to check on substitutes. I would generally have the teacher that's next door to them in the building, introduce them to them and say, Miss Matthews is substituting today, and this is Miss Hodge. She's a teacher. If you need anything, touch base with her. Miss Hodge, from time to time, touch base with your sub.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they do that or not,
Right.
but it's a very good thing to do.
I agree with that. Thank you.
All right, so recommendations on policy changes, we'll get it to the policy committee and,
Thank
and go from there. So,
And y'all forgive me for yelling at you.
nah, you're fine.
That was
All right, so next on our
It was a school
agenda
board yell.
is, Ms. Yench is gonna talk about art programs. Okay, why don't we take a, at Dr. Powell's request, and probably mine too, is to take a short break.
I lost the thing you passed out.
All right, we're ready to start again, but before we go, I really wanted to talk about the meetings we had yesterday and really thank Melissa and Holly and Beth and Frida for helping get that set up. I think it went really well, and we had, for folks who don't know, we had about 40 people here at the noon meeting, and I guess the administrators' meeting was pretty jam-packed. Yes, sir. Mr. Parsons, yeah, so we got some good responses, and I think it was all in all good, but really thanking everybody to help set up and how well the meetings went, so, all right.
Dr. Grissom mentioned to me this morning, I talked with about something else, that they had about 20 to 25 teachers at the 3:30 meeting, and I believe she said somewhere around 10 to 15 parents for the 7 o'clock or the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock meeting. So there wasn't a large turnout for either one of those. Probably what we had up here for our 3 meetings was about more than half of what they had on the other 2 meetings.
All right.
Of course, ours was mandatory, so they had to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The board had to be there. So, all right, so we're ready to proceed here. So our next item on the agenda is, Beth Yench is going to talk about art programs, and when we talk about new programs or adding to programs, then Ms. Melson is definitely going to be an integral part of the conversation with budget, so.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cordell had to leave because he was having some back issues, so.
Okay.
So he gave his regrets, but had to leave.
Does that work?
Yeah,
No, Robert, it won't work for you.
no excuse for you.
No, no, no.
All right.
Thank you. I was an art teacher. That was what I taught. So it's a subject I'm passionate about, like I see Robert with athletics. I taught in Rutherford County, and I taught middle school. So I learned a lot from that. One thing I did learn that we were taught in school, if kids don't believe they can do art by middle school, very few of them will ever try it. Because by middle school, they're expecting to be able to see it look like whatever they try to draw or try to paint. And if it doesn't happen, then they just say, I'm no good at art, and they give it up. I'm passionate about getting art into our elementary programs. And I know that means Ms. Melson's probably going, ah. But the statistics for having art in your programs are pretty good. I sent you out a paper. I'm not going to sit here and read through it. As a matter of fact, it's late enough. I'm going to keep this short. And I will be sending the school board more information about this. But I want to show you this. I'm going to pass it around. Now, you guys may not think that looks like much, but this is a second grader. He obviously, our little Rylan could not write his own note like some of the first graders in here I had who could write very well. But the kid can do art. And the fact that he sees that muscles and feet and hands and all these different parts are on the human body is pretty amazing. Because if students don't get this by the time they get to middle school, you will see them continue to draw stick figures. And you'll see adults who say, oh, I never could draw. And if you ask them to draw a human, a body, they'll give you a stick figure. That's because you didn't catch them. Robert, at what age is it important for kids to learn they can do athletics?
Middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is the time period in which they're either going to continue to keep playing and keep participating, or they usually give it up.
It's the same with art.
That is the turning point right there, that you either stick with it or you're done.
And when do they decide? Do they decide coming up through elementary sports that they can be pretty good at it?
No, it's usually the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Okay.
Because your elementary, your youth, they call it, leagues and stuff of that nature and things, that's more of a pastime to hopefully trigger that. You're trying to trigger that through elementary and the youth in the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade range to find out if you've triggered it to pursue and go forward or not.
Well, that's when you lose them in art, which means that even more so, and don't get mad at me, Robert, even more so than our athletic courses in our elementary schools, our art programs are important. We have a lot of kids out there like this, and I don't know who Rylan is. I don't know if he's a special needs child. But my goodness, if we have a special needs child who can succeed in something like art, it's not fair not to catch those children. It's not fair not to catch our future architects and our future graphic designers and all of those little ones by not having art in elementary school so that they can get some concept that they can do art. And I always used to tell the kids who will come in, I said, I can teach you to draw. I can teach you to paint. But if they'd already turned off their mind they couldn't do it, I couldn't get them any further. And so I'm going to continue to be passionate about getting art into our elementary classrooms. And I'm not just saying that the teachers, they try their best to incorporate art into the classrooms. But my goodness, they've got to teach reading and math, and they're getting tested on those. We need art teachers who have been trained to show these kids how to draw. I mean, we wouldn't throw an art teacher in to teach them math, and expect our scores to be high. So we can't expect our kids to be passionate and good about art, even if they've got a gift. If nobody ever shows Rylan that he has a gift, he'll never go anywhere with it. And so I am very passionate. I put together a few statistics. I didn't actually realize that I was up tonight, or I would have gotten a PowerPoint. I would have really gone on and on. But they do find, particularly with our low economic kids, art in itself will cause them to stay in school. It'll cause them to be more involved in school. Their test scores go up. They don't miss as many days if they're very involved in their art. So let me just encourage you to think about, Rutherford has some really high scores for their school system. I was looking them over. They have art from kindergarten. Each school hires its own art teacher, each elementary school. Each middle school has an art teacher. And it's very important, and it's worth coming up with the money, April, to see that these kids who are talented in this way get an opportunity to develop that talent. I was always the one picked last for anything athletic. They were like, I had her last time, you take her this time. That was me. But I had a teacher in 5th grade who caught me doodling, and she said, come on up to the blackboard, gave me colored chalks, and said, create a mural about Christmas. And it came out really good. And so I knew from there that I could do it because I had a teacher who saw it and encouraged it in me. And so please take the time to look over the few simple things that I managed to get together tonight on short notice, although it wasn't Tom's fault. He told me a month ago. And I'll be sending the school board out some more information. It's something that will boost our scores.
Well, all I can say is that after all these years, I finally found out why I can only draw stick fingers.
That's right.
I still can't color in the lines.
So, I guess my question is, and for whoever can answer here, is what kind of art program do we have now in the schools? And what is the process to do kind of what Beth is visualizing here in the schools and how would that work into the budget process and those types of things? We can
Right now, we
discuss.
have art in our middle school. We have a teacher that it's through the rotations, and it's a itinerant related arts class. And then in the high school, we have the art class as well. Mr. Parsley could probably speak, well, I know he can speak a whole lot more on it than I can. But our elementary, it actually was looked at a couple of times, past couple of years. And it is really budgeting, it is budgeting numbers, was one of the main things that was part of it. And there was other, I hate to say it this way, but other needs that ended up, admin and teachers felt like was needed more. But I won't lie to you, I like the idea of art in elementary school. And there's things that needs to be explored and looked at. As a elementary principal for 16 years, one of the things you have to also try to figure out is when you add another class such as art, which is, and I agree with everything you're saying, 100%, but it also takes away a little bit from the academics. That because if you're going to put something else in, it takes the place of something, and there's so much time. But there's just ways you got to look at it. And I think it's I applaud you for bringing it up and looking at it, because it is a good thing that our kids need and deserve.
I think too that, of course, budget is a thing you have to look at. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of art teachers out there. We have a difficult time trying to find art teachers for our middle school and our high school level, but they are out there if you can pull them in. And I know, like Mr. Shore said, in elementary schools, we used to have music, library, and physical education on a rotating basis. And I think at some point in time, we added an art person in there for a short period of time. Those were budgeted through federal program, Title 9. Which was it, Kelvin?
It wouldn't have been Title IX.
Title, what was the big title project?
I don't know which one it would have been.
I doubt it's Title One.
Title I, yeah, that was
Through
it.
Title I?
Those were all through Title
I doubt
I
it was Title I,
programs.
no.
But there was, I think, one person, and when in my situation, we had 6 elementary schools, and each of those teachers had 3 schools that they would serve on a rotating basis, sometimes once a week, depending on how they fell, sometimes twice a week. I think y'all had that too, maybe Mr. Shores, I'm not sure.
We had to share a teacher, which we kind of moved away from that and been able to move away from it. So that we do have the more of the music and the PE and the library and so forth. But, there's a way to do it. It's just, it takes the effort and the work to do it, and finding the funding to pay for it and make it work. And like you said, being at the school level for 16 years at the elementary, teachers are doing art. It's not trained art. It might be a little bit more artsy, craftsy type things. I don't know. If you're an art teacher, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a difference in a trained art teacher compared to the other, but they are doing those type things. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, well,
I have to agree with Beth. These kids are desperate to be creative. I've been lucky enough to be asked to come do some guided paintings at both Deerfield and Hickerson over the past few years. And these kids welcome me with open arms. They know what I'm there for. They are so excited. They listen. We create these beautiful things that they're proud of afterwards. And they treat me like I am their very best friend in the world because I'm letting them paint. Some of them will be like, I haven't painted since last time I saw you, Miss Jen. And that makes me sad. They need to paint all the time. And they're just so happy and they're so proud once they get to do this stuff. So it is more important than we realize until you see them in the moment and what it means to them, which sounds silly if you've never played with it yourself. You know, if you haven't ever really played with paint or paintbrushes yourself as a child, you don't know how amazing it makes them feel.
Maybe we could look at, maybe possibly in the future, one for the whole elementary, and just rotate them and have at least an art class every couple, 3 weeks at a school. Because I know as a former elementary school teacher, a child is talented in different ways. And some of the kids that I had may not could do math as well or read as well, but they could draw, and they would bring me pictures that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that is talent. And I read through what it shows, a lot of lower income kids, kids that aren't meeting up to their potential or whatever, they're really good in art. And if we can concentrate on that, we're going to save some of these kids
Yeah.
in the future if we can just pull them in through art.
Well, it's
So,
almost like you have your athletic group that are excel with athletics. You have your academic group that excel with academics. And you have your art group that can excel with their arts. And that includes the music as well.
Right.
Because music is definitely an art.
Yeah,
But definitely, anything that we could catch would be great. And one of the things that we were looking at was trying to do 2 for the system for the elementary. So it's 1 for 3 schools, one for 3. Then you start doing 1 for 6. You're talking about trying to get through the entire system. They're never going. They might see art
Yeah.
one time that year.
right.
But if you do it 2, it's more. But it
Maybe you can
benefits.
specify a grade, start out with specified grade level that you're going to offer
That's even a
art.
possibility. You're
And
right.
then you might could work it in that way to begin with and just see how it works.
Everything Mr. Shore said was accurate. We did talk about this during the last budget. But there were other needs that we felt like the principals and admin thought was more important. When you're talking about people, it's not just think about their salaries, it's their benefits too. So you can add 40% to a salary. So if you talk about 6 people at $70,000, that's a lot of money to get. We need an art program, I agree, but we did talk about having 2, maybe 2 that could move around to the schools and split their time. But when you just think about that in dollars, like if you want to talk about budget, just depends on what year they come in on and where they're on the pay scale of what we pay them. But you can figure, like, if you will look at that pay scale, you can figure adding about 40% to their salary, and that'll be like the total between benefits and their salary. So just
Maybe
keep that
we
in
can
mind.
research grants or whatever, and, sometimes there's fine arts grants that aren't pursued because it doesn't affect the academic programs, and a lot of times those are overlooked. So, possibility.
We could do that to start with, but if we bring teachers in,
Mm-hmm.
I hate to release them when our grants run out. So it would be a matter of seeing what benefit they add to our program and then making a way to hang on to it.
Well, and once I found this out through experience, if you get a program going that is really good, then parents don't want you to do without it.
Yeah.
And neither,
We
so
have that in
kinda-
excellence.
Yeah, so,
And also, any program like this requires a champion to move it forward, so.
Mm-hmm.
We've got it.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, ever since I came into this county and found out we did not have art teachers in elementary, that's been 40 years. And so I wanted to champion that, since that was one of my hopes coming onto the school board, was that I could champion art. And there are a lot of art teachers out there graduating from MTSU. Yeah, teacher program, and they're all going, where am I going to get a job? And so there are the teachers that you can begin to advertise through those programs, and they would be delighted to know they could come out with a job.
I know in the past, we've had, and I think Mr. Parsons was shaking his head back there, we've had some good art teachers at the high school and the middle school, but they're not as plentiful as some areas are, but I'm sure they're out there if you want to try to run them down, but it has been a little bit difficult getting them, I know.
And that was also another concern that we had when we worked through budget last year. Like, where do we find an art teacher at this point because they are hard to staff. They're one of those positions that are really, really hard to hire.
Do we know if Manchester City Schools have art in elementary?
Yeah, I think elementary, don't they have a dedicated art teacher for each elementary school? Or do they share one?
Y'all put me on the spot here now.
It's a test. I was
honest-
thinking they had a dedicated art teacher at each school.
I think they
I
do.
think
Both
we do,
Westwood-
but
yeah.
I couldn't sit here and tell you for
And-
sure that we do.
Yeah, and, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's one area cities beating us.
Yeah.
I want to recognize one. One of them was Susie Fugger,
Yes.
I thought so, at College Street, right?
Susie Lowry.
Yeah.
Susie
If
Lowry,
if
Susie
you go to
Fuller was here
Cretton's
for a long
hitting
time.
facility, just look in the door.
Yeah.
So you got to do. You know, she painted Cretton's mural.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's since
And,
retired, but there's
Yeah.
some retired people out there that
You'd
might
recognize her.
like to come back on a
Yeah.
part-time basis to fill in, I mean, to have a program coming up.
And that is what some of the schools do, is they bring in a part-time art teacher. Because there's a lot of the art teachers, especially like you say, when they get older, they don't want to teach full-time, but they still want to continue teaching. And there's not many jobs that will allow you as a teacher to go part-time.
Well, I was glad to hear what Ms. Peacock Hodge said was she's being invited out to actually do some smart things with students at those two schools even. So that they're reaching out some, but different, once again, it's a little different than having a program.
Yeah.
Jennifer's been modest. I mean, you could drive down the 4-lane during Christmas and see all of her artwork, so people don't realize what she does. And we,
Because my mama let me paint when I was a
That's right,
kid.
it's a huge thing.
we've got 2 art majors on our board, and we just don't, we need to recognize them for what they really do, because Jennifer's very, very good.
Well, thank you very
Well, I
much.
would say that we could hire them, but you can't, board members can't work in the school system. so.
I would love to continue doing this, and
We
you
could let
don't
her do
have
an,
to pay me.
we could let her do an art expo on
You
the
could,
front, on the front windows
that
out
was
here,
my
though.
statement.
That's what I was
You
about to
could
say. We
come
got
in and
2 art teachers
volunteer
sitting right there.
once or twice a week.
Hey, I feel like I'm doing that once a
I gotta
week.
worry
I've
about
been
me,
doing
So-
it a
especially
lot.
if it involves scissors.
So it's probably too late to get something in the budget for this, our upcoming
Well,
budget, or?
I think what would have to happen is the board would have to get it on, like, would have to approve the positions because they would be a new position for
Okay.
elementary. So that would have to happen before I can start working in the budget.
Right, and when would you need to have information like that?
I mean, I would say before March, so I can go ahead and start building it in. So there's still time if y'all want to start, because I'm just starting to build the budget, so we still have time to get those things in.
Yeah, the board will have to approve those positions.
Right, and so Beth, you're gonna have to do some homework and work with Ms. Nelson on that, so that's what being a champion means.
Yeah,
I think this is a great thing to champion. Thanks for bringing
Yeah.
this up.
sure.
I think you'll probably have plenty of help, too.
There's a little Rylan out there that's counting on it, everybody.
Exactly. All right, so that's.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, final item on the agenda is transportation of students, and Mr. Kuhn, and we have a guest speaker also, and I think Mr. Gilly might chime in too, so take it away, Mr. Kuhn.
All right, I've given everybody a copy of kind of what I put together on basically we've got policies and we've got regulations on transportation of students on school buses. But when it comes to, transporting small groups of students in smaller vehicles, we don't really have anything on the books for that. And this was talking with Mr. Alex Spann. He's the one that's over student transportation with the Tennessee Department of Education. And, that when I first talked to him, he'd give me a list of, recommendations and, that I'd brought up at the board meeting. And since then, I've talked to him, and I've done some looking at some schools that's already got policies in place, because this is really and truly, this is a fairly newer problem that a lot of schools have run into, and a lot of schools have purchased minivans for this application. I mean, why run a bus when you're transporting 4 kids? Number one, we have an issue. We don't have enough bus drivers as it is. So, you you run into problems with transporting the students where they need to, you know, if they got a skills event to go to, if they've got, you know, sports or whatever, you know. But with this, I mean, I'll go through it. What his recommendations were, was to create a specific policy governing the transportation of pupils, in vehicles by staff other than school buses. You know, as far as the staff drivers, you know, of course, they'd need a driver's license. He recommended that they have a medical statement, you know, from their doctor stating that, you know, that they're physically able to drive. You know, being drug tested and having their MVRs pulled. He said he recommends that, you know, the MVRs be pulled same as bus drivers. You know, if they're gonna be responsible, you know, transporting the students. And then he said, as far as the vehicles, of course, by federal law, we cannot use 15-passenger vans because they do not meet the safety requirements. So which I'll get to that in a minute, but you know, as far as the safety equipment in the vehicles, they said you need a first aid kit, a fire extinguisher, and he said he recommends a camera system. They said because that's going to protect not only the students that you're transporting, but it's also going to protect the district as a whole. And then another item, by them being in a smaller vehicle, of course, the vehicle's got seat belts. Well, if that vehicle is in an accident, seat belts lock up. You need a seat belt cutter of some sort in that vehicle, you know, so everybody can get out. I've got on here, you know, ultimately, the Coffee County Board of Education is responsible for the safety of any pupils being transported in vehicles owned by the Coffee County Board of Education. As a governing body, we must ensure that all vehicles are equipped with the necessary safety equipment and all drivers must have the correct qualifications. On the second page, I put together some policy points, you know. Any vehicle owned by the school district, except for buses, which may be used for student transportation for extracurricular activities. The vehicle requirements, maximum of 9 passengers total, including driver, working seat belts for all passengers, safety equipment in vehicles, including first aid kit, fire extinguisher, seat belt cutter, etc. Camera system, and I know here's the thing that a lot of people's had a problem with. You know, we've already got cameras in buses. You know, the camera system, I know, you know, you got a monitoring fee and everything that goes along with that. But, you know, since we're already doing it with the buses, I don't see where, you know, we can't have the camera systems maintained by the transportation department. That way they're all the same type of cameras, all running the same system. You know, wouldn't have to purchase other systems. Maintenance log on file for each vehicle. And speaking with Mr. Skipper on the CTE vehicles, he said that once a month, I believe that, you know, part of the CTE program, you know, they take care of all the maintenance on the vehicle. They change the oil, they clean it, you know, they have a list of items that they go through that they do on the vehicles. You know, and, you know, he's got, you know, a maintenance log on each of the vehicles. As far as driver requirements, approved personnel only, of course, must be 21 years of age or older. MVR must be on file. medical statement on file. You know, as far as the requirements, you know, pulling the MVR will tell you any major infractions that they've had, you know, what their driving record is. Well, you know, you can, you know, as a board, or, you know, as the policy committee, you know, if they wanted to, they could go on and actually determine what constitutes major offenses that would prevent somebody from, you know, being able to be an approved driver. Operation of the vehicle, no cell phone usage while operating the vehicle. Of course, that's state law. I mean, you gotta have hands-free, but, maximum speed of vehicle will be posted speed limit for roads traveling, slower during inclement weather. There again, maximum speed limit is state law on that road. I mean, but, students to follow same policy as bus conduct. All passengers must wear their seatbelts. I mean, that's, you know, as far as the policy, I've looked at several policies, and I meant to make copies of the ones that I'd found, but I know one in particular, you know, their policy on this is about 6 pages long. I mean, they're very in-depth. Of course, about half of that is on the driver requirements, you know, what they can and can't do, and, you know, what they must have and whatnot. But that's, you know, I think as the school board, it's something that, you know, we need to put in, you know, maybe get a policy on to, you know, protect ourselves, protect our kids, protect our staff that's driving the kids, because like Mr. Spann said, all you are, he said, you know, it's not if, it's when. Said, you're one he said, she said, problem away. And said, you know, that's gonna be a major black eye on the school system, and he said, and that'll probably wind up in a lawsuit of some type. You know, always does. So, you know, it's something that he highly recommends. And like he told me, he said there's a lot of school systems that are starting to implement this policy. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
What's our current policy on this?
On this particular here, there is no policy. We got a policy on the school buses. We got a policy on private vehicles.
Yes.
Okay.
But on this here, there is no policy on transporting in school-owned vehicles other than buses.
Use of school vehicles other than buses, there's no policy. Of course, this is a new program for us. I know Mr. Parsley may want to address some issues with it, and I agree there needs to be policy set up on it.
Mhm.
One that I would, I guess, add to the situation, in the operation of the vehicle, if a driver is using the vehicle, if he's charged with, he or she with any kind of moving violation, then they should be prohibited from driving that vehicle for whatever period of time you want. It may be a year, it may be 6 months, whatever the case may be. But I think that should be put in the policy too.
Right, well, that's, I mean, to me, that's where the policy committee comes up with,
Right, right,
what, you know, what punishments or, you know, what, based on their, you know, MVR report, I know one of the school systems said that if a driver had a major,
Moving
major
violation.
incident,
Yeah,
and it was, I think, you know, if they were speeding, it was 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, you know, that they could not drive for 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you know, I mean, it's all in how strict you want to go with it.
right. This is a good start, I think, with it. Very good start.
Yeah.
Couple questions I have, I guess, either for you or for the trooper. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. I'm sorry.
Microphone.
Sorry. Give the man a microphone.
Join us, have a seat there.
We're not gonna quiz you too much. need to say a couple of things or ask a couple of things. This is for the general use of the policy committee coming up. Okay, I'm sorry, what was your name?
It's Lieutenant Jeff Appleby.
Okay, Lieutenant, I know the MVR, that's a five, I know our bus drivers have to have that. And I believe twice a year, April, is that correct, or once a year, to get the MVR for the drivers on their vehicle driving record? Because I just signed a purchase order
I think it's once a
today
year.
for, I think it's $5 per person or per driver, and I'm not sure whether it's every 6 months or once a year. Could you?
I don't know I don't do school bus inspections, but they do have to do the MVR, and it is $5
Yes,
per
they do
person.
that, and I think that $5 is paid for by the school system, I believe. And also, the medical statement, I know bus drivers have to have a medical statement every year.
Well, they have to have a DOT physical.
Right, DOT physical. I don't know whether it would require a DOT physical for this type of.
By law,
vehicle or
it
not.
doesn't, but he would recommend that there be some type of
Yeah.
medical statement on record that, that the doctor says, hey, they're good, they can drive,
Right.
they're in good enough health to drive.
To go through the medical that the bus drivers have to go through, a lot of people couldn't pass that, I know. 'cause
Right.
you've got a lot of, but that's good. I mean, I think you're fine with that. The only thing is, from time to time, Mr. Parsley, I may ask you, do most of the individuals that drive these vehicles, are they pretty much the same people all the time for the most part? Yeah, you might ought to come up, if you don't mind.
We got another one.
There you go.
I guess just fill us in on how
So-
the individuals are selected to drive the vehicles and that type of
Sure.
thing.
So we, with Mr. Skipper's help, and Mr. Skipper, as you all know, spearheaded our purchase of the Suburbans. We have 2 Suburbans at the high school now, and those are used for extracurricular activities. Specifically, they are for the Career and Technical Education program. The Career and Technical Education program has priority for use of those vehicles. However, other extracurricular programs are allowed, we allow other programs to use them when the CTE programs do not need them. What we find is that there are a handful of CTE programs, and off the top of my head, probably 3 or 4 sports that tend to use those, and that's just via the nature of their programs. For instance, our agriculture program, they have lots of competitions in that program. And you may be taking 2 or 3 kids to a competition on a school day. And as Mr. Coon said, logically, it's just not real efficient to take a school bus.
Right.
And so ag would be an example. Another example might be golf, a sport. Let's say you've got 6 or 8 kids that you are taking to a golf match. Logically, it works well to take one of those Suburbans, which they are maximum 9-passenger vehicles.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask. What is the capacity of these vehicles?
The capacity is 9 for the Suburbans.
Including the driver?
Yes, including the driver. Now, so we have instances where a program takes 1 Suburban with a group. We have occasionally instances where both Suburbans go with a group, a little larger group. As far as criteria that we have for the drivers of those Suburbans, we do pull the MVR report. The staff member currently is required for paying for the MVR report. And based upon that report, Mr. Skipper actually takes the lead on discerning whether the person is eligible to drive, but the criteria that we have set is over a period of 3 years, you could not have 10 MVR points. And that's what we have in place now. Early spring, I forget what month, last spring we received those, but that's what we ultimately settled on. And every year, we require that the MVR report is pulled. So,
So you do have a policy for
Well-
those, use of those vehicles,
So-
a sort of
Procedure.
we do, it would be fair to
policy
say
procedure,
that there are
maybe not
procedures
as
that
in
we
depth,
have.
but we have those.
We have procedures in writing at the school level, but not board
Has
policy
anybody
per se at all.
asked you for that? To-
Regarding this discussion, no one has asked me specifically, but no, not that I can think of. I don't recall it, for sure.
Does anyone in the system other than the high school staff have access to these, or do you have a protocol for that?
Other than the high school staff. Well, thinking through that, because they are, the vehicles are primarily for use of the CTE program, we do have some CTE teachers at the ninth grade academy. Now, those kids are taking high school classes, but it is a different school. So the Raider Academy CTE teachers would also be able to use those, or if there's a sport at and the sports, are high school level, but there are some coaches at Raider Academy at the high school level. But beyond that, they are not used by any other schools, not used by any outside of school system organizations at all. It would be educators, it would be employees of Coffee County High School or possibly of Raider Academy. We could have a non-faculty coach as well driving one, which those are technically system employees if they are non-faculty coaches.
Still
Those are
paid
the
by
only.
System, correct?
Excuse me?
Just to clarify that, they're still paid by the system.
Yes. But again, over a period of 3 years, currently, we don't allow the person to have more than 10 MVR points. We do run the report once a year. And we're not even we're getting close to a year having those. I can't remember what month we received them last year. Now, we also do say that we reserve the right to tell an employee that we're not going to allow them to use them. So, yes, the person could have less than 10, but maybe we know of a situation where we're just not comfortable with the person driving, and so we would just not allow it.
And they still have to check them out. You gotta-
What do you mean by that?
You gotta schedule the vehicle and basically.
Yes, so we have
you don't
a
just-
calendar.
The keys aren't in them, right?
No.
Okay.
The keys stay in the bookkeeper's
Flip down the
office.
visor, right?
The keys stay in our bookkeeper's office, which is up part of our main office. That's Miss Amy Barnard. And so they are checked out with the bookkeeper. And, we've got a calendar, for requesting use of those vehicles. And again, our CTE programs are going to have priority on those vehicles because, they were purchased with CTE funding, and that's why we got them. But it's been a benefit to other extracurriculars that we have those, and possibly a reason why it'd be good to have them for other extracurriculars outside of CTE.
Paul, I got a question. Just curious, because I don't know, is about how many would you say different drivers have you had, and just different people?
I could gather that information.
I'm talking about just a guesstimate.
A
I'm not gonna hold you
ballpark
to
is
it.
probably 10 to 12. I mean, it could be a little more. Maybe it's a little
Oh,
less.
that's fine. I
Yeah.
was kind of curious. I didn't know.
Have you had any, feedback, because I can pretty well tell you, a lot of the recommendations of, safety features from the camera systems, that's been the big one.
Mhm.
I don't think there's anyone opposed to that.
I'm not.
I
We're
know,
perfectly fine with having
because I've been
cameras.
questioned about, from some of the people that do use them, about it, and nobody's told me if they've had any issues.
Uh-huh.
Have they told you if they have any issues with some of
No.
these? They're good things that definitely need to be put in place in the glove box or on the dash.
Mr. Skipper and I have talked about this topic quite a bit, since, and I forget, it was 2 or 3 months ago, I think at a board meeting, you discussed
the
this topic. a little
December
bit.
board
December.
meeting.
So we've talked about it quite a bit since then. We're not at all opposed to having those cameras, and no one has said to me that they are. A first aid kit is logical, and we're glad to do that. A question I have, I guess for Mr. Kuhn. I know, in looking at what you were reading off as far as some of the requirements for the vehicles, I noticed that some of those are things that are law. You know, you can't drive over the speed limit.
Right.
Can't use your phone when operating the vehicle.
Right.
And I guess I wonder on this, so are there actually school board policies out there that include those things, or are those just suggestions? And I say it because they're already law.
Well, there's school boards out there that have that written in their policy just in case, you know, for some reason the laws ever change, you know, if they go back to, you know, the cell phones and whatnot. But most of them, you know, they don't even allow hands-free use of the cell phone for the driver because,
Okay.
you know, I mean, it's one thing, I guess, if you've got it for navigation purposes, but you're not, you know, you're not looking over trying to make a call or whatever. You know, you're not truly distracted.
Punching buttons on your phone.
Exactly. You know, so I mean, but, you know, I mean, yeah, if you know, a lot of them are law, but, you know, they need to be spelled out in the policy in case laws ever change.
Fair.
It's kind of like school board policies. A lot of our policies are set up just exactly like the laws are made. So it'd be the same type thing here. I think put it in there that they have to be certain requirements and so forth. Even though it's state law, they still need to be put in the policy, I think, just as a reminder to those that are operating these vehicles.
Exactly. And, you know, the thing is, it's, you know, I know here for us, the only two vehicles that we have that would qualify for this are the CTE vehicles. But, you know, in the future, you know, this is something that we may, you know, as a school system want to look at is buying minivans or other item, you know, other vehicles because.
We would welcome that.
Yeah,
I mean,
because,
just
I mean.
for convenience of our groups.
Exactly. I mean, you know, if you've, you know, like you say, you know, your ag classes, you know, we're going to a, you know, FFA, they're going to you know, a hog judging contest. Guess what? There's 3 of them going. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous to take a school bus for, you know, and the problem we're running into as a school system is, you know, we've got buses, but we don't have drivers. You know, and you know, the drivers are stretched thin. You know, there's lots of days that your mechanics are having to drive. Your you know, staff in the transportation department, they're having to, you know, to drive. So, you know, the transportation department's basically, you know, there's not a spare mechanic. If there's a problem, you know, then, you know, we just don't have enough bus drivers.
I know right now, Matt and Tim are both driving full-time this week. Because of the lack of drivers and so forth.
Yeah, there's several, I think, out that's got, you know, sick and whatnot.
Sure.
And I mean, it, you know, I mean, it's just something you run into. And, you know, I know that, you know, as a system, we've had a bus out by the road with a hiring sign now for about 2 years. And it's, you know, nobody.
It's there permanently.
Yeah, nobody really wants to
Cheaper
do
than
it.
buying a sign.
Fortunately,
What it'll bring.
we're not like some systems that had to cut routes and had to double routes and those type things. Happens occasionally, but it's something,
Right.
it's not but there's some school systems that are very close to us that are having to cut out bus routes. Of course, the state law says you don't have to pick them up within 2.5 miles to 2.25 miles of the school, but we've always picked them up next door, in all honesty, for the most part. But I think we're very fortunate to have the transportation system we have and the ability to do what we do with it.
Right.
Let me throw this out, just not gonna throw it out, but let me say something just a minute. For those vehicles, as far as insurance right now is concerned, okay? We did get in contact with Tennessee Risk Management, who is our insurance carrier, and it came back from them. Let me just read that. I don't wanna miss anything. It says, in Tennessee, the insurance follows the vehicle. In your specific instance, TNR MC, which is Tennessee Risk Management, is the insurer, and as such, all protection we provide to the school system is in place for the vehicles and drivers. No need for proof of insurance from their employees. So that's a relief for us. We weren't sure about that. And then also, you mentioned about the F endorsement. Of course, that may or may not be a part of the policy, but they did mention that the F endorsement is not necessary for employees to operate their personal passenger vehicle or a board-operated vehicle. So the F endorsement is not necessary. I think that's for taxi drivers and chauffeurs and
Well,
things like that, but, you know.
I'd taken that off because, you know,
I
after,
noticed that, yeah.
after talking with Mr., you know, Mr. Span, he, you know, he said that that was something that they've run into. He said, you know, from the way that they look at it, technically, you are for hire because you're being paid, you know, as a teacher or a coach or whatever, you're being paid, you know, that's part of your pay.
Right.
You know, so you are a paid driver transporting passengers. But, you know, he said by law, you know, all you have to have is a Class D
That's
license.
kind of stretching it, I think, but I understand. where
Yeah,
they're
but I
coming
mean,
from.
you know, they just look at it from,
Right,
from,
right.
you know,
But yeah, they're, because this is a new operation for the school system, I think there needs to be policies set up with it other than just maybe procedures that they have at the high school to protect the Board of Education and protect the school system.
well, you know, I mean, you know, with this, like I said, I know right now all we have is the two CTE Suburbans, you know, but, you know, in the future, I think it's something that, you know, we really may want to look at. You know, of course, eventually, you know, those Suburbans will wear out, you know, but, you know, if, you know, as a school system, if we purchase minivans for this purpose or whatever that are, you know, more Suburbans or whatever, you know, number one, they're cheaper than buses. They're cheaper than buying school bus, even little school buses, because that's what he said. He said, you know, by not doing, allowing 15 passenger vans, he said, your only other choice is a small activity bus. Well, you know, they're just about the same price as a big bus.
Well, that requires a CDL. I
No,
think,
it does not.
activity buses.
No, it does not, because it's under, it'll still.
It'll fall under that new law that they're able to drive then.
Yeah, with a Class
But
D license.
it will match the vehicle
Can we ask him
requirements.
all these laws on the driving?
That and I'm gonna have to look up, if it's a new law, I didn't.
There's a law about, actually, with the 15 passenger vans, which we are not allowed to use the 15
Right.
passenger van. So you're able to use the small buses, but it's not helping you on the price. You might as well go ahead and buy a big
Exactly,
bus.
exactly. But with a big bus, you have to have a licensed bus driver, you know, but,
Yeah.
but
To me,
But
this is much
where is
better
the-
than, because heretofore, we've had to have parents to drive some of these smaller groups somewhere, and that creates a lot of problems, good a lot of times. And then buses are not necessarily, they can't leave before a certain time, they gotta be back before a certain time, and unfortunately, we don't have spare buses and spare drivers. We may have spare buses, we don't have spare drivers. So I think the program is what we're looking for here, but there do need some policies on it, and I agree with that. So I would, suggest that Mr. Ballard get a group together, get the policy committee together, and work on that.
Probably got quite a few
Take
policies.
take
that
what
need to-
Mr. Parsley already has at the high school and mix.
Yes, sir. He's got it covered for this year, I think, if it's okay with everyone.
Plug it all together and
Yes.
work on a bigger
And
package.
I think I would like to add the private vehicle transportation too, because I think I'm looking at the policy, what we're saying here, and I think it's kind of vague. Really, all we require is a director or designee's approval and them show a proof of insurance. But I think of the passengers, those kids that's in the car, have their parents signed off that they understand that the school system has no liability. Because I think it's real easy to get a bunch of kids in your car and head off to a ball game with them. And some of those parents may not realize that responsibility lies on me. I'm carrying
Right.
those kids. If I have an accident, some may think, well, the school system's responsible. That was a school sanctioned trip or whatever, or transportation. And heaven forbid that would ever happen, but I can see where something like that could occur.
It's not good. It's just like you
Yeah,
said.
and I've just got, and that's what I was looking at, is that it's not really detailed, like there's nothing mentioned about the passengers, it's about the driver and the liability insurance for the driver, the owner of the car. But
Right.
nothing about the passengers.
Mr. Parsley, I know you've got because I've seen it.
Are you talking about the
Private
private
use.
vehicle? Well, there is a private vehicle use board policy, and I'm not sure if
Yeah, I
that's
just
what you're
got-
referring to.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yours was
looking at.
more
Looking at.
in
Um,
detail.
I have
This
a
one's pretty-
screenshot on my phone, and it's
It's
back
right
there.
here. You talking about the board policy?
I
No, you're
think
talking
that's
about
what you're
board
referring
policy.
to. I
Yeah.
looked-
Has a private.
Yeah, because I think you told us before that they have
Yeah.
to have the designee's permission from the school, either director or designee, which would be
The picture
you.
of his is more in depth.
Let me see what board
The board
policy it
policy.
is.
Okay, it's
and
3-4, it's 3404.
I think we need to take
one
everybody's
second.
notes.
While you're looking it
High
up,
school and here.
April,
Plug 'em
do you know the cost of the camera system for the buses? Of course, this wouldn't be as
3402
extensive because
specifically.
you wouldn't have to have, I think that we've got one going one way and one going another way and two back in the back and some in the side and so forth. But
I'm not trying to answer for April, but that's actually part of the bids anymore, and that's been bid, since we've been bidding for, well, past 5 years, we've added that as part of the bid process. So I don't know that we have it for individual add-ons, the price right now. So that might be something I don't know.
I'd have to
if
go
we
back
have
and
it
look
right
several
now.
years, like, because I know that we put that with the bid now. I'd
Right.
have to go look back, and I don't even know who we would purchase those from, so
well, each
I'd have
year
to do a
we
little
get new-
research.
But each year we get new buses and we have to put cameras on those buses.
That's what I'm saying,
They
it's
just take
part
swap
of the
them out.
buses.
Okay.
It's part of the bid.
Oh, it's
So
part of
it
the bid.
comes
I got
with
you.
the bus already on there.
When we
I
order
understand
them, we,
that.
yeah, we put them.
But transportation does have
3402.
the company that we use the technology from. So they have it, but I don't think April would or I would have
I'm
that
gonna
information.
find out.
$20.98 from Timu.
Well, I told Mr. Parsley about a system that I use on my
sorry.
things, and it's, I've got 14 units in my fleet that I track and have a forward-facing and rear-facing camera. It's all GPS. You can go into it any time. And for 14 units, it's $300 a month.
I agree with
And-
Chris on if you do put units, doing the same thing as we already use so that you already have everything set up and you're not coming up with
Two
something
different
new.
things. you're
Yeah,
trying
you
to
might as
view
well
and
use the
track.
same
Well, if you need,
system.
if you need to view the video for whatever reason,
I-
you know,
got
It's
it.
One
compatible with the hardware we
that
have.
we've already got, you know, I mean, to me, that only makes
Same on
sense.
this,
Yeah, that's-
Because that way the transportation system or whomever could look, if there happened to be an incident or concern, they could look back through the transportation system to see if anything did actually take place.
Correct.
If I could, the board policy that we have been, that we've been referencing is policy 3.404. I think that, and there are several statements there, including the type of insurance that the driver must have, that there must be a special permit for each trip involving the students, including the field trips, and so on. There are 6 statements, it looks like here. I mean, possibly it could be more detailed.
Yeah, it's not
there-
hard, it's
yeah,
not hard to come together
Yeah.
I mean,
and plug
but-
more into that.
Yeah, you could just add something like, students, the parent or guardian of the student being transported understands that the liability is on the driver of the car, not the Coffee County School Board, even though that's, I think sometimes that parents get, that they do think it's the school board, that's.
Well, they would need to sign a waiver of liability.
Yeah, right.
I remember
And when
times
you-
when
you
we
did
would have
that
to
a lot of
sign
times
those.
'cause
Yeah.
At times, teachers had to take kids on, well, there was no other transportation, you would take them on field trips.
Right.
And they signed off a
Right.
waiver.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if maybe that needs to be done.
Well, I mean, that probably needs to be reviewed and, along with,
I know it's gonna be very,
along with,
difficult.
well,
But
along
maybe
with
if
a
they
lot
just
of other
sign one At
policies.
the beginning of the year, my child's in basketball, and I understand that they're, at times will be transported by a parent, and I waive, I waive the responsibility of the school system.
I know a
Just
lot
a
of times,
thought.
and Holly may be able to chip in on this, cheerleaders are involved in where the parents do a lot of driving with the cheerleaders if they can't ride the bus or whatever the case may be. And that is where this policy we've got comes in, that the parents has to show a certain amount of insurance liability, have to sign off on some paperwork. And I think, I'm not sure, Holly, do the parents have to sign that they know that this child is riding with an individual?
You know, from my experience at Coffee Middle with cheer, it's not an option for the cheerleaders to ride the bus. Nobody's ever explained why to me, although I'm sure there's a reason. But it seems like we were told that cheerleaders were not allowed to ride with coaches. I don't know why. Every cheerleader's parent transports their own cheerleader to the game, or if another cheerleader needs a ride, I know I've carried many of them. I don't know if I should have or not, but now that we're talking about it, but I hate to turn a kid down that needs a ride.
I've
So
noticed the same thing with the buses, and especially in high school. Take a football game, for example. We might not have enough to fully fill out 2 buses, but we could have put the cheerleaders on there, but we're still taking 3 and 4 buses.
yeah.
Because we're keeping them split. I don't understand.
Well, I know I've
I don't
seen times
understand
when
either.
the.
I mean, I would like to know, like, why. I mean,
there's
I
been a-
don't mind taking my daughter to
Maximize
cheer,
efficiency.
because I'm going
But-
anyway. But we do have some cheerleaders that did need rides consistently throughout the season, so it's something we can check into.
I guess just your comments made me think of this. There are some instances, you know, you could take any particular group, and it would be a smaller group. You couldn't do it with like a football team or something like that. But there are instances where some of our groups travel on their own. And what I mean by that is that the coach or the advisor for the CTE group, they're not offering the transportation. We're simply saying, you know, this competition is at 6 p.m. in Tullahoma. I want you to be there at 5. We'll see you there at this gate or this door. You know, in those situations, the school system would not be responsible for the students' travel.
Right.
And in those situations, it would not be necessary to have any kind of note signed or anything like that, because students are responsible for arranging their own transportation with their parents. Now, we realize that in many of those situations, multiple students end up riding with a parent, such as what you've
But
described.
the coaches don't set it up.
That's exactly
They basically
right.
release the students, then the parents figure out.
That is correct.
How they're gonna, to
Wait.
get their child to
Is
That's correct.
competition.
I'm gonna step in that doorway.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I'm gonna step in that doorway, but is that due to a lot of the cost? And when I say cost, a lot of these smaller sports, smaller organizations,
Yes.
cheerleaders and that, can't afford through the athletic department or whatever to pay back for that bus, the fuel
That is a large
cost. That
part
is a
of it, to
very
be
big
honest.
part of why
It-
we're not transporting.
It's
A lot of
it's lots of times it's the time that the group needs to go. It could be before school is out because of a long trip.
Very few.
Yeah, occasionally it is that. And so it could be that. It could be, we know how much it will cost to go X number of miles on a bus trip. And
They don't
we
have that
can,
much money
we
in
can
their
just,
account.
we can just travel on our own. Parents are responsible for getting their kids there. And you know, I mean, it's free to the school system, I guess you might say, but I mean, parents are ultimately, you know, traveling and taking the kids.
So what I'm hearing is we need to update policy 3.404, right?
I think we hit about 19 different ones. we need to
Yeah.
update.
I'm
So-
trying to simplify, Robert.
Well, I'm just, you know.
And then a policy based on your policy for the school board to cover what Mr. Kuhn is talking about with the 9-passenger vans or the non-bus transportation. Is that kind of simplifying what we're hearing here? So that would be a policy committee situation, Mr. Shores?
Mr. Skipper and/or me will be glad to send you our protocols that we have in writing so
Okay.
that you all can work, you know, use those as you create a board policy.
And when we do a policy down that line, it actually includes the ones that's part of it, which is the high school. So Paul and Richard would be a major part of that writing of that policy.
Yeah.
And Mr. Anderson also, because I'm sure that there's parents that transport middle school kids also.
Okay, I guess I was going back to the Suburbans.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we were talking about
Sorry.
Suburbans,
Yeah,
but
Sorry.
that's what I was talking about, so.
Excuse me.
I
got a few questions for the man with the gun in the ring.
Oh. We give you
And then
honors.
one for whoever at the end.
The only one we know about.
You've
was-
heard all of this. Do you got any recommendations to add to what these gentlemen have threw in here, as far as safety things? And then, I'd kinda, if you could give I just wanna clarify on the licensing kind of things and requirements and DOT requirements of physicals and things like that. It never hurts to add to and have, but as far as what is required by law.
Sure. So, when you're getting into your medical certificate or your F endorsement, anything like that, that's really more for a commercial business. That's what that's designed for. I think when I read that the medical certificate from a doctor, I think that would probably be, I mean, you see these truck drivers, the DOT physicals aren't that in-depth. And so I don't know, you'd probably be better off going to your primary care doctor and getting that letter of clearance to drive, which, if we have to send out a driver's license for somebody to go retest, they have to go to their doctor and get a clearance letter to be able to drive and then take it back to the driver's license and get another license. So I think that you don't need the F endorsement. You don't need a medical certificate. Like I said, I think that letter would be sufficient if you guys want to require that. It's not necessary. But the vehicle is not big enough. Does it have government tags on it, like
Yes.
county tags? So it's a county vehicle.
So it's
so
exempt anyway.
It's exempt.
From anything.
Yep. So, but the
But
liability
it never hurts to
aspect-
have it.
Well, it's like us, even though we're exempt, we still have to have everything that a citizen would have to have because the liability aspect of it, somebody's gonna go to court and start suing people, so.
Seatbelt, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And I was sitting here thinking, if I may, all of our vehicles have a, I don't know what it's called, but it's plugged into the computer, and it's a real-time. It documents everything, like your speed, if somebody's wearing a seatbelt, how many people's in the car.
Almost like a black box.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's real time, and it's real time. That you can pull it up on a computer and sit there and see how fast somebody's going, and all that stuff. I'm sure they get a lot of complaints on me, but, anyways.
I won't tell if you won't.
The requirements that, for the vehicle, I think those are on par with, I think you would need the fire extinguisher. I would just suggest that you mount it in the vehicle, don't let it be a loose item
Right.
in there. And then, but everything else, you just have to have a D-class license. You don't need anything special.
All right, the last one I had. I've heard about no 15-passenger vans. Why?
That's National Highway Safety.
I thought it was 16.
It's 16 or more, including the driver, but it is a 15-passenger van, but there's 16 people in the van
The
because it's not
16th
counted.
man is the driver.
Yes.
But you take the seat out and there's not a seat in that vehicle, it'll still classify as less.
Yes,
So
correct.
for a school
Take
system.
one seat out.
And correct me or not, I
We
think
got-
the
I got a whole pile
actual
of them in
vehicle
my
is not
building.
allowed in a
We
school
take one
system
seat
to
out.
be used for
Then they're straight.
transportation of
School kids.
school kids.
Yeah,
It's-
I know
it's-
Trent
That's
do
the
it.
reason why you can't use a 15-passenger in schools. And that's where that new law came in, that private schools could get away with the vehicle. We can't. They could get away with the license, whereas it didn't make any difference for us because the vehicle wasn't going to work.
But
So
it's
a
all,
van-
it's all on the safety. The vans aren't, in crash tests, aren't as safe
Correct.
as anything else. And that's why, they recommend if you use a small bus, that it's done by one of the bus building companies,
Just get your
because
line.
they know the safety protocols dealing with school systems. And that's the whole reason of the 15-passenger vans don't meet the crash criteria, the safety regulations.
Who does the inspections on our buses? To the Department of Safety or?
Yeah, we do
Department of
it. We
Education?
have a special group of people that do it. Johnny Anderson or Danny Vire are our troopers in this district that do ours.
And this guy is, how does the Department of Education control, or was it just?
He's the director of student transportation for the Tennessee Department of Education. So,
I didn't, because I knew the state done the inspections. and,
Right, but he's-
That's what make her tell a bus, I thought, but.
And then
no or no
I just, in your question, I apologize if I didn't mean to step on toes. Okay, the question or the statement you made about the small buses not needing the CDL, they're saying that you do need a CDL if you have this is 16 or
Actual
more
bus?
passengers.
Okay.
Yeah, so 16 or more passengers has to have a CDL.
Well, I was going with the smaller.
Yeah, even the short bus, the one I just.
No, it's
It's
back
an
to
activity.
the 15 or lower.
Yeah,
I
they-
think that-
Oh.
I think you could get away without having the CDLs.
Yes, yes.
But
Yeah.
it has, for a school system, you have to use a
A-
bus.
Yeah.
because
Right,
it's
a
got
bus
the-
manufacturer.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But over that, yes.
With the
I was
lines
thinking,
and
I
all
thought you were
that.
talking about a
No,
short.
no,
the
I'm
short
talking
bus.
about you going
Okay.
smaller than the 15.
Okay.
Yeah, what they call an
Never mind then.
activity
Okay.
bus.
I apologize.
Yeah.
But regardless of how many seats you got in it, Robert, it's what it's built for. Like you said, you was laughing about and at one time we tried that. When I was here before, if you had 15 passengers or more, you had to have a CDL to drive it. I said, well, what if you take a back seat out and only have 10 people to get in the van?
Yeah.
It's still rated for a 15 passenger, so regardless of how many seats you got in it.
Yeah,
That's what it's
I've got
designed.
I've got by them guys a bunch, though. I got a whole building piled full of the single seat.
Yeah, it's what's
And
the
he knows what
vehicle's
I'm talking
designed to
about.
carry.
What it's rated for is
What's designed to carry, yeah,
Yes.
how it was built, yes, sir.
All right.
Like
We
the
don't want
GV
your-
like
we-
the GVW, I think, 9 times out of 10, it don't matter. If it's over 10,000 pound GVW, you're gonna have to have at least a health card, correct?
If you're in commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and intrastate, you don't need it. So if you're just staying in the state of
Or
Tennessee,
tag.
yeah, I'll be looking for you.
Yeah. You know where that's going.
So have we beat this one to death? So, and then some?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Yes, sir.
So we got marching orders on this. We got a couple policies, one we got to update and one we got to make up. I just got a couple, just a few more things. I talked real quick about the agenda items for next week's board meeting already, and a couple, 3 things we want to have on there is we did not, I failed to get the director qualifications changes that the director search committee made onto the agenda last meeting, so we need to put that on this meeting. We also had a number of requests to change our videos to just go back to the board meeting only, on live videos, and then just do audio on the committee meetings. So take a little burden off of Mr. Damewood. And so that'll be on the agenda to vote on. And then the last thing is policy committee is doing some changes to the policy committee to move the principals more to advisors and not voting members of the policy committee. And so that's going to be on the agenda also. So, so just so you know kind of what's coming, and Melissa, so you know too, so, because I know we got to get the agenda out pretty quick, and I did discuss these things with Dr. Powell earlier today too. So with that,
Question. Oh, you
Sure.
go
Go
first,
ahead.
Rita. Are you sure? Is the new Union basketball team coming to the meeting for us to honor
Yes.
their achievement? Okay, I'm excited about
yeah,
that, so I
yeah,
wanted to make sure it
that
was
is on the
there.
agenda too, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. No, we have a recognition.
Yes, we have a recognition. Yes. We will have a recognition. Both participants will be here.
And who is it?
Coach Barlow and,
Yes, I have that. I thought you said basketball.
oh, I.
Oh, I thought the new Union
Oh,
boys.
no, I think they got moved to March, because
Oh.
we had the was the volleyball team? Who do we?
The volleyball team got moved to March, but, and the recognition this, for February is Coach Barlow and, another lady.
Who are we doing this one?
Miss Crabtree.
I thought, Jennifer, we talked to you about
Yeah, the new Union boys basketball
the
team.
Union basketball team is gonna be
Yeah, I thought we had that on the agenda, so,
I don't.
It's both, isn't it, girls and boys?
I think it was just
Yeah.
the boys
That-
that went
Yeah, I
through
thought we
without
were-
losing any games.
Oh, I thought, since both, somebody requested that they were champions both.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think it was the boys that went through everything without losing a single game.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know we talked about that, because we moved the volleyball team to March, yeah, so, because they couldn't make.
So New Union girls and boys basketball.
I think it was just I think the boys were the champions,
Yeah,
and that's
the
what,
boys.
that's what we were doing.
No, they were double champions. They were boys and girls, I believe.
Were they?
I believe so.
They said double champion.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then, good. Let's make sure we get whoever is the champion. We want
Yeah.
to honor
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I have it in my email, I thought I forwarded it to you, so my apologies, so.
Oh, I hope they can come the last moment.
Well, I told them that they were gonna be on the agenda, so I thought I'd copied you on it, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I believe they were double champions. They won, their boys and girls both won the championship.
Come on, Melissa, you're supposed to know this. Yeah, you're supposed to know this.
Okay, so, and then
Oh, yes,
director's
yes.
qualifications, video,
That
and
was the
policy
fourth
committee
one,
advisors.
Okay.
So that's the three
Voucher
things
bill.
on the agenda.
I'm just glad I got to see Charlie blush.
Right. Oh, and there was one more thing that we needed to have on the agenda too, is the voucher bill is coming up again, so we need to, vote on whether we want to, I think TSBA sent us a resolution against it.
Yes, sir.
So we have to vote on whether we want to vote against it or not.
It's now called the Freedom, Education Freedom Act. It's the same thing as the vouchers or the scholarships, I think it was called last
Yeah,
year.
whatever, it's still a voucher bill.
Yeah, it's still a voucher bill. There's been some changes in it. I can get the information to you folks. I can send the bill out, or Melissa can send it out to you folks to look.
Yeah,
Do what now? Okay, so the bill is in there. There's some changes in it. One thing I would like to caution you about that we just received from TOS day before yesterday, the bill mentions the fact that a school system will not lose any funds next year based on the act, that you keep the same funding you had the prior year. But the kicker now is that was a one-year deal only, as opposed to every year. So that's something that's come out of it in the last 4 or 5 days.
Also,
Robert?
wasn't there, isn't part of that, and part of that change was if you were an outside source or private school or what have you, and you took that child and took that voucher, just one, it only takes one, that school was required, or they wouldn't get the voucher, that school was required to fall in line with state rules and regulations.
All right.
They have to be accredited.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It's an or situation. They can either take a standard test or they can take the TCAP test. If the private schools can now.
At first.
It's
at
still not the
first,
same as public schools.
At first, but when they come in with this last thing you're just talking about, I think it was taking away the choice. It was, no, you go to state or.
They have to be accredited. That's what I'd read yesterday on it.
Well, we're talking about two different things, an accredited school versus accountability on testing. Is that,
No, I was told accountability.
okay?
I didn't know about the.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, Robert. I'll check tomorrow to find out.
Yes, please do.
I'll check
Please
tomorrow
do.
to find
But
out.
I listened to it this morning on the radio about 2:00 in the morning.
that will be on the agenda anyway, so.
I don't listen to the
That
radio
was
at 2
2
o'clock in the
o'clock.
morning.
I have a.
Okay, sure, one more.
I don't think all of y'all know this, but Mr. Damewood he's not being paid to stay all this time that we've been having all these meetings. And I think that he should be. I mean, we should not expect someone to stay these meetings and set up these microphones without some kind of pay.
Yeah.
And I did not realize it.
I didn't-
He didn't tell me, I asked him. And maybe hope, if something passes that that we're just going to be recording the committee meetings, then he won't have to be spending all his time up here
Right,
with us. We
right.
can record them.
He
But,
likes us.
but I feel like that we need to, I don't know if the board would have to pass that or whatever, but I think.
I
it
know
needs to
you
be
do.
done.
We could, yeah.
I mean, for what he, yeah, because it's been a lot of, you've been,
Yeah.
spent a lot of hours up here with us.
And I know you enjoy hanging out with us, but, not that much.
Since you had the conversation toward me, when you say recordings, you just mean recordings, not broadcast.
Just audio, yeah, not,
That,
So in that
Melissa
motion,
could
just be careful
record it.
that you're not committing yourself to have a live stream
right,
audio.
right, no
Right,
live streaming,
right.
yeah, just,
Just that you'll record it
Recorded
just for
audio,
records
yes.
and,
Right.
it's not that it's gonna be hidden, but.
And it'll be
Yeah.
open to the public
except
if
for
someone
full
comes
board
in.
meetings, yeah.
Gotcha.
We will still live stream the full board meetings. So
Right, just
that,
make sure
that will
that's
be
clear in
the,
that motion, or you're
yeah,
gonna lock
that will
yourself
be the
in
motion, yes.
Having mics everywhere again.
Yeah, exactly, so, yeah.
So I don't know what would we need to do in order for him to be paid for what he's done? I mean,
Isn't
we
that
can
a
count the hours.
compensation?
Supplement.
You can't afford to pay him on an hourly basis.
And I'm not saying that, because
I
there's
don't-
other people that stay here too, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we're requiring you to, and that's
Well, that is
different.
true.
yeah.
I don't think it should be comp time, I think you
Dr.
need to get
Powell and I
paid.
have a history of conflict. I can talk to him about that.
All right, just
Why?
so you're compensated, because that's not
Last
fair.
word.
Last word, I have a question for Mr. Moreland. Westmoreland, yeah. I listened to it on the vouchers from the TSBA this week, and one thing that was brought up is that if a child comes out of our system and they have a,
IEP
thank you, it's so late.
or
An
504.
IEP that, and they need services, that the school system they come out of is gonna be required to give those services. Like, occupational therapy or physical therapy. We would still have to pay those for that child, even though they're in a private school.
That is something that's still being debated and discussed at this point. As we stand right now, it looks like that we potentially, as a district, would be responsible for those services, and it would fall under a service plan. However, that's still debatable at this time as far as exactly how that's going to look. As soon as I find out and get any information on that, I've got a special ed call on the 4th. I'll ask that question and see what kind of feedback I get from the State Department on that.
Because
And
that could get
follow up.
very expensive.
You can only imagine how expensive
Oh,
that
yeah.
could be.
Oh, yeah.
No.
That $7,000 for that voucher money doesn't even scratch the surface for what those services would cost us.
Right.
Not to mention, if they're going out of county, we'd be looking at travel as well, if that had to happen.
And unless it's changed also, the $7,000, if it is given to a private school, and that private school decides that child is no longer welcome at that particular school, and they come back into our system, we do not get money for that child. It stays at that private
Yes,
school
yes.
all year long.
Yes.
Tom, I got one more thing. What are we gonna do about these bleachers, guys? I keep
About
repeatedly
what?
getting asked questions about these bleachers. Are we done with the?
No.
bid?
Mr. Shores, we discussed that this afternoon.
Yes, we did discuss that.
Okay, the bid, actually, you'll see it in the paper, tomorrow's paper. It's also going online tomorrow with the Facebook. So bids are out, starting tomorrow. They will be requested for the packets, and then, I'm thinking it's February the 20th is the due date for bids to be turned in. My plan is for it to be on the board agenda for March, for decisions on the board on what you want to go with.
But the concern also is, I think, Mr. Hansard, that if the board does decide to go one way or the other, there's no assurance that it can be done this summer, regardless of which way we
Okay.
go.
Okay.
When did he change his mind?
About a week ago, when I talked to him, he said that it was pretty much that he was already pretty much booked for this year.
'Cause he told us he had till March.
Well,
He
I got in
told
touch with him and was talking to him, and And before I could actually put the bid packet together, because you don't put a open-ended completion date, so I had to put a completion date on it, and I was talking to them, and for new bleachers, you're gonna see this when you look at it, new bleachers won't be this summer. The completion date is gonna be by the end of next summer. So it'll be, the end of 2026 for new bleachers if it's completely changed out. If the board ends up deciding to go with the modifications and renovations to the bleachers that we have, I put a date on through I guess it's the Monday after our fall break, because I've got to give them time to be able to get it done. But there's more chances of them being able to work it because you can close off half the gym and they could continue to work on the other side. But then also we have to have the gym, well, we can't have basketball or volleyball going on during those times. So if it just depends on which direction the board goes, renovations by the end of the start of the following week of fall break, because that also gives them fall break, but they might be able to get it done during summer. It's iffy. Complete change out, it's the end of 2026 summer.
Now, is that with that one company? Are we getting bids from more than one?
This is.
Okay,
no,
well,
no.
see, so any company
Or you
could
hope to
have a
have
different
30.
timetable, is that correct?
Okay. I had to come up with a time limit, and this should work for anybody that puts in a bid. And this is open to anybody. We can have one bid, or we can have up to 100 bids. It's whatever it gets turned in. It depends on who turns in bids. I only know of 3 companies that actually provides bleachers for gyms. There are other companies that can actually do the fabrications and the work for the remodel and so forth. So it really just depends on who turns in bids. If we only get one bid, that's what we get. If we get multiple, we get multiple.
I guess what I'm saying, are we determining the timeline or the people? I mean, because we don't know where we're gonna get our bids. Someone else could say, we can put those new bleachers in this summer.
Absolutely. And basically what I was doing is trying to make it so that anybody, I can't narrow
So
it
we
down.
really don't have a timeline.
Do what?
We really don't have a timeline then.
I had to put a completion date, but our goal is for it to be done earlier if the company's able to get it done earlier. But it just depends on the company and if they are booked or not. So I had to put a completion date in.
But that doesn't mean it can't be done
It
soon.
could be done earlier.
And so what completion date did you put again?
For
You
complete,
put it.
for complete removal of bleachers and new ones going in, if that's the way the board goes, it'd be the end of 2026 summer of 2026.
Okay, so you couldn't have said by the end of the year?
I could have, but
But you don't
I
know.
might have knocked out everybody from being able to bid on it. See, if you put it if I crunch them and they can't do it, then you're not going to get a bid even.
Right. I'm just thinking, preferably you could, anyway, I'm just trying to figure out how we could not have to wait so long.
But now if it's renovations, once again, I've got to give them a time that they can do it. If I crunch them, they might be already booked up and they're going to say, well, there's no need me putting in for it because I can't do the job. I can't get it done in that amount of time. So I've got to be careful. I've got to give them enough time to be able to get the job done. So that's what I
Well,
did.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that company's one that was telling you that that's the time frame.
But the renovation, the timeline on that was the week after fall break. They had to be renovated if that's the route you go. Am I correct?
That is correct, and possibly it could be done during the summer.
Yeah.
It just depends on the company that gets
Right.
it, if
That's
they're
my
free or
point.
not.
Some company could
Any
possibly do
company,
it.
right.
I just have 2 questions. Does everybody have their packet for their trips? I know, the new board members are going on one, and everybody is going pretty much on, legislative. Do you have your packets, your room reservations?
I believe
You
so.
gave them to me.
Yeah,
I didn't
it was a
remember
while
that.
back, yes.
Lord, I don't.
I'll figure it out.
Are we good with the recording part?
Yeah, let's
Motion to
adjourn the
adjourn.
meeting and we can ask those questions.